You're listening to episode 222 of the Comics Pals. We're a group of comic book journalists and friends who record a podcast together because we don't talk enough about comics in our daily lives.
I'm back,
Guys.
y'all.
Oh, Marco's back.
Kale. No, go ahead, Kale.
I stayed a donut.
That
Welcome to the episode.
What? Marco comes in hot and Kale's like, "Oh no, excuse me, I need to tell you what I had for breakfast today."
Breakfast? Excuse me? Do you know what time it is?
No, I live in America. It's 11 o'clock here. Right? I don't care what time it is over there.
Fair enough.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that we have a very special guest on the show this week. A few weeks ago, we did a review for a book called Made in Korea. We were wowed by it. We thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Tremendous.
And so we sung its praises. And then the writer, Jeremy Holt, sung our praises. And we connected on social media the way you kids do these days, that thing you guys do. We did that. And Jeremy was kind enough to join us today. So thank you so much, Jeremy Holt, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I found your clip on, of all places, a subreddit. And I was like, oh, what's this?
Okay.
And I think it was an image subreddit. And I was just like, I rarely look at Reddit, but I was like, oh, what's this? And I was like, oh, thoughtful discourse about something I wrote. This is amazing.
Well, hopefully we can keep that streak going with this interview, but don't keep your hopes up.
Not based on the opening. Kale and Marco, I'm not going to do it in front of company, but we've got to have a conversation.
Get your
guys,
house in
because-
order, right? Sean and I are staunch professionals, and y'all are just really just phoning it in week after week.
Yeah.
I had a bit
Staunch
ready.
professionals. Yeah, you two were gone last week. Didn't even show up to work.
I was
Staunch.
Sean was here.
professionals.
I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't done. I'm always here.
I was on vacation, so
We're gonna have the Civil War of the Comics Pals a little later on, but right now the focus is going to be on Jeremy Holt, who has written Made in Korea, which I mentioned earlier. That was awesome, and I highly encourage you to check out Virtually Yours, Before Houdini, Skip to the End, Skinner, and all of these books are books that I hadn't heard of, and that's what makes being in comics so much fun. Because the first time you hear of a creator, you're like, oh my God, this was so great. This is their first work. I can't believe it. And then it's like, no, it's not. I've actually been in the industry for 10 years. We're going to get into all of that in just a moment. Before we do, I want to let you guys listening know where you can find the show all over the internet. Of course, we are the Comics Pals. Whatever podcast hosting platform you're listening to us on, make sure that you leave us a like, a rating, and a review. If that happens to be YouTube, hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it with your friends. All those things are free to do, and they help us out a lot more than they cost you. Come hang out with us on our Discord server, where we're always having very fun conversations about things that we all love, you know, the geek stuff. And if you want to write to us, do so at thecomicspals@gmail.com. You guys have been amazing with the comments on YouTube, writing into the show. We really appreciate it. Keep that up. It all means a lot to us. Now, enough about us. Jeremy, Made in Korea. I loved it. I thought it was tremendous. It was my pick of the week. I had such a great time reading it. It hit me right where I live. Talk about the process of getting this book created, and what it's like to have, you know, what's been, I hope, a pretty successful book so far.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And yeah, the genesis for Made in Korea really stems from my love for AI narratives. And I've kind of started developing this idea that all really good AI stories at their core is about an adoption experience. And I just had never seen anyone do it directly. And I started kind of letting the idea simmer in my brain for a couple of years. And I started writing other things. And then I decided in 2017 that I was no longer going to write white male cis protagonists. So when I started reviewing all my work, Made in Korea was the one project that I hadn't fully developed, but was the perfect project to work on to explore the Asian American diaspora that I've experienced, that I'm leaning more into in the last few years, and getting in touch with just learning Korean and getting to know other Korean adoptees as a transracial adoptee myself. And so that's kind of where it stemmed from. And then a mutual friend connected me with George, and their work is amazing. And they've leveled up their work in the past 3 years since we started working on it. So the art you're seeing now was not what it looked like when it started. It was somewhat similar, but they've really improved just by working on other things. So that was my kind of attempt to pay homage to the AI narrative and to try to reinvent that wheel to a degree. And it took a long time to get in with Image. So I am glad that of all the books or pitches they've reviewed, this is the one they went with.
So I actually wanted to ask about that because I saw your pin tweet about the actual announcement of the series and everything, and you had said that I'm now an image creator. It only took 12 short years. Don't give up on your dreams, kids. The best ones haven't given up on you. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Like I guess, first of all, what has been your kind of journey, I guess, with pitching to Image and why Image, I guess? But how does it feel now to have the first issue out in people's hands and have people reviewing it and all this stuff?
So to answer the first part of that question, I am a late bloomer to comics. I grew up with them, so to speak. My oldest brother collected them. And so I was familiar with what I think I was reading Jim Lee's run on X-Men, I think. So I did get kind of captivated by some of the like soap opera storylines between like Jean Grey and Scott and Wolverine and Jubilee and just, and Psylocke, and just reading about that was really interesting, but I didn't collect them. So then in 2008, I visited said brother, and we just went to a coffee shop to read comics, and he handed me The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. And I was blown away by that. And I was like, oh my God, this is where comic books are? And he said, that's like 20 years old. I was like, what now? So then I went right to Forbidden Planet in Union Square because I was living in the West Village at the time. And I was just like, what are people reading? And that's when I fell into the Vertigo rabbit hole and then Image. And I liked that there wasn't a ton of continuity that I had to keep up with to read these stories. And I liked that they were far outside the superhero genre. So when I started reading those, I read Scalped and Why the Last Man were the ones that really influenced me. And then, reading more about Brian K. Vaughan's work and then getting into all of his work, that inspired me to start writing. So I just started writing comics, not knowing what I was doing. And I wanted to land a book at Image just because I liked what they were producing. And a lot of my friends at the time were getting series done there. So like my friends, Riley Rossmo and Curtis Weeb and Ed Brisson and Donnie Cates, Teenie Howard, like all of these people, were kind of my crew. And then they've just all, ascended to great heights. So that's kind of my foray into trying to get in. And then Image, it was just a very weird journey. Nobody gets in an Image the same way. There's no one proven way. Even if you have the most perfect pitch, it just might not be the pitch they're looking for at the time. So you can't really rely on that. And I tried everything. And the way I got in was just very unlike anything I had heard of. So the myths are true.
How did you get in?
Basically, I knew a production editor. My friend Vincent worked at Image. And whenever I was in the Bay Area, I would just hang out with some of the people that worked there. And then I'd been pitching both to Eric Stevenson in person and through their submission email, and just not hearing back. And I'd been told, try this, try that, try this. And eventually Vincent sent it on to Marla Isaac, who is basically sort of an executive assistant there. I'm forgetting her main title. Sorry, Marla. But she was the one who championed it. She was the one who kept saying, I'm going to show this to Eric. I'm going to show it. And that took about a year. And I, at one point around New York Comic Con, I said, can we just call it time of death? Because I just need to move on with my life. And she said, no. I'm going to get him to look at it. And so it was like late October or mid-October of 2017, or no, 2018, that she sent me an email, said, you're in. It's like, what? And so there's a huge delay. And I'd never heard anyone getting in through anyone other than Eric. So, and I didn't speak to Eric directly at all during those conversations. So yeah, it was very surprising. And then George had signed on to another book when we got the green light. So they were gone for a year, and then the pandemic hit, and so it all got pushed. But I'm really happy that it came out when it has, because I don't think it would have resonated with readers if it had come out a year ago.
So I think you maybe mentioned that it had been in production for 3 years. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how does it feel to, I guess I should ask, is that 3 years from when you actually started working on it, or from when you had the idea and started letting it germinate?
I'd say the 3 years from, let's see, started in 2017. Maybe it was like 4 years actually, from basically the concept. So when I pitched the first issue script and the 1-page outline to George was in 2017. And I finished scripting the 6-issue series Christmas Eve of 2019. So I've been just sitting waiting. And as far as like what it looks like in print and holding it and all that, honestly, I read the first issue hundreds of times over the last couple of years that I was just convinced, yeah, this is garbage. Like, it's not really like actiony, and like it might be too slow for people, and this hook is pathetic. And I was just like, well, we finished the first issue, like let's just see what happens. So all of the reviews, I'm just like, maybe I just desensitized myself to what I was writing.
Yeah.
So it's been just surprising the life it's taken on since it's been out, and readers have been, vocalizing how much they like it.
It's funny that you bring that up, because that was kind of what I was driving to, is just I can't imagine how tough that must be to like hold the torch for something for 4 years, and and I feel like we're always our own worst critics, so that gives you so much time to sow those seeds of doubt and everything,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I knew I had an idea of what this book was going to do coming out through Image. Like the fact that I've done all these other books that no one has heard of. It's like I hustled just as hard on those other books. I did all the PR. I was doing these interviews. I was getting out there. But if it's a small press publisher, most people, it's not going to reach most people. And, I did about the same amount of hustle, and Image has been super supportive, but how far it's reached outside of what even Image was capable of and what I'm capable of is like, it's just surprising. But I also know that everybody reads an Image #1. So the first issue has drastically changed the trajectory of my career in the past 3 months. Like, I'm starting to think about stuff career-wise that was never an option, for the past 10 years. So it's been nice.
So I'm sure you can't give us the specifics, but like what kind of stuff are you talking about?
What I can say is within 3 weeks of the announcement back in early February,
Mm-hmm.
I found myself having conversations with an executive at William Morris Endeavor, which is a large talent agency in LA. And he had heard about it, and he was shopping it around the agency, saying like his job is to connect people with projects, his clients of WME. And he emailed me and my lit agent like back in February and said, I'm showing this. Is it okay if I show this around the offices? And I was like, sure. And he's like, okay, I've sent it to this filmmaker, I've sent it to that filmmaker. I'm like, what? Like, filmmakers I adore? What's happening? And by the end of February, I had a film agent. So she's been systematically going through my catalog and just trying to find, new life outside of the comic book medium for them, which has been super exciting. And there's been a lot of serious interest in Made in Korea as far as what it can do outside of comics. So that's been super exciting.
The comics industry is so interesting because the way that success seems to work here is like you put books out and they kind of maybe they buzz a bit, but it's not quite where you want to get, and then you do something with Image or nowadays Boom or one of these publishers, and then all of a sudden you're on the phone with some actor who wants to play the main character in the book that you wrote. And now, like you said, you've got a film agent and all this other stuff. And you're like, well, I was just working at the coffee shop.
Yeah. Yeah. It really just depends on on the book, and I just think that with Made in Korea, with Bong Joon-ho winning, for Parasite last year, and then Lee Isaac Chung and Chloe Zhao being nominated this year, to me it was just perfect timing, because I think Asian representation and what Asian Americans and Asian actors can bring to Hollywood is now seriously being considered, and I think there's something about that being out in the zeitgeist for Made in Korea to just kind of thrive. And yeah, and I also know there's just a ton of adoptees, and I've been getting emails from adoptees who feel seen and feel represented, and that's really was part of the goal of writing Made in Korea.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we talk a lot about representation in comics on this podcast, and how it's gotten better over the last 10-15 years, but also where the spaces for improvement are. And books like Made in Korea being able to exist really, really inspired me that we're trending in the right direction, because I don't think that a book like Made in Korea would have existed or thrived even more recently than just looking back 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're here and we're getting books like this, and it's thriving, and you're getting more opportunities, and it's not just you, right? Those things are so inspiring. You've been in the industry for 12 years. How have you seen the winds of change blowing?
It's a great question. I think it starts with the creators. Like I said earlier, I was writing white male cis protagonist stories for like 7 years, and I know why I did that. As an adoptee, I was raised within a white culture. I mean, I spent a lot of time overseas. I didn't move to the US until 11th grade, but just being raised as very American, I didn't really identify as Asian or Korean to myself for a long time. And I was writing white male hero stories because that's kind of how I viewed myself. I view myself as a white person a lot of the times, which is something I'm trying to dismantle within myself. But then I also realized that I think I did it because it was more accessible for readers, because white characters like a blank slate in a lot of ways. But then I decided to just challenge all that. And when I started leaning into my personal truths and weaving them into my narratives, Virtually Yours being probably the most direct one before Made in Korea, where I was just writing about personal experiences. I lifted personal experiences like going through a really nasty divorce that I wrote into Virtually Yours, which, people interviewed me last summer, said, this works, but we didn't think anybody would weave a domestic violence story into a romantic comedy from the male perspective. And I said, well, because, and I've been open about this, I was in an abusive and physically and emotionally abusive marriage. And I decided to write about that. And I thought that it humanizes one of the male protagonists in that story in a way that I haven't seen in, these rom-com movies. And it's also part of a relationship. Like, falling out of love is part of the cyclical nature of relationships. And that's what I wanted to focus on, is how do you survive falling out of love, not just falling into love. So once I started doing that, really it resonated pretty deeply with readers and editors. And I just decided to just pedal to the metal and just, write what makes me feel uncomfortable, because I think it's more relatable.
That's beautiful. And I think that one of the best things about the industry right now is that you can do that. And readers are ready. Readers are ready to be challenged. And most people that I know who read comics started with superheroes.
Right.
But we all, I mean, not all, but a lot of us have that point at which we say, this is great and I love this, but what else? And you represent that what else. And that's what the industry needs, is for what else to become the norm. Just like how superheroes are the norm, we need that what else to become the norm. And for that what else to look different and sound different and be about different things than what the, character generated, person is gonna do in their story. We need different. And you just sold me on that comic too, Virtually Yours. That sounds great. I want to see that, because it lets me know who you are.
hmm
and that's
Yeah,
what we need.
Virtually Yours was kind of my homage to writing a rom-com set in New York City because I lived there for a while, and I got to explore a version of New York and Brooklyn that doesn't exist anymore, as in places that I used to go that don't exist anymore. So it was really, really fun to write that because I got to go back in time in a way. And everybody should check out my co-creator, her art, Elizabeth Bale. Uh, Her art is amazing. Like, she did not skimp on any details, and this is her first full book, and everybody should check it out because it's a joy to read, but it's a joy to go back and just stare at every single panel because there are so many little Easter eggs and so much detail to every single character, even background characters walking down the street. It's just a visual feast.
So I'm interested in the kinds of books that you like to read, because you mentioned that The Dark Knight Returns was a book that you read that you really loved. What do you enjoy reading now, and what are the books that you've read over the years that you've had an interest in?
Man, I feel like I haven't done enough reading. Like I said, I did get into like a lot of the Vertigo titles. So, and the Image titles that I got into, I think I really enjoyed Chew when it first came out, and I read that for a while. And I really like this series that was only, I don't know, 2 or 3 arcs called Young Liars through Vertigo. I'm forgetting the creative team on that. It was just such a zany, weird book. Yeah, it just took me a long time to get through a lot of these titles, like, again, Scalped, Transmet, Preacher, DMZ. And then my friend Curtis Weeb wrote a series, Green Wake, for Image that is still one of my favorite series that they've produced. Nailbiter was one I was really into for a while. And what's great is that I've become friends with all of these people, all the writers and artists, so it's nice to just chat process with them. Yeah, so more recently, I've just been reading a lot of novels in the last few years. And I think Murakami's 1Q84 was a book that I think about a lot. I like revisionist history, so Stephen King's 11/22/63 was an awesome read and a really good TV show. But recently, I think I've been obsessed with, and I've been telling everybody this, is Michelle Zauner's memoir, Crying in H Mart. She's the front woman for the band Japanese Breakfast, which is a favorite band of mine. So I've been telling everybody to read that. And I just found out that she's going to be penning the screenplay for a film adaptation, which is pretty rad.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Nice. I didn't expect to get novel recommendations, but I'm going to listen back to this so that I can write those down because I need some books to read.
I'm almost done reading Ready Player 2, which is pretty enjoyable. Trying to think, I did finish a book that, in 2018, I decided to try to read 50 novels in a year, and I got to about 34. That year, no, sorry, maybe that was 2017. One year I actually stopped writing. I was so tired of rejection that I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to read books. So I did that for a year because I wasn't finding any publishing success. I had written 2 novels that weren't going anywhere, and I was just like, I'm kind of burnt out. So I just read books for a year, and then I realized, oh no, I need to be creating. So I jumped back into it.
Yeah, I think everyone has that point, right, where they're like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep getting rejected. I always think about Todd McFarlane. I think he said he got rejected by Marvel 100 times. It might have even been more than that. It was a really high number, yeah. And then he got accepted and he created Venom, and now he's Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, actually, because of Made in Korea, I recently had a conversation with him. I was just like, what? You know who I am. This is weird.
How does that feel to have that moment with like a creator of that stature, I guess?
I think I would be more surprised by it and maybe freak out more, but working as a genius at Apple, I was interfacing with celebrities all the time. Like, I've helped, Patrick Wilson, Willem Dafoe, Kim Cattrall, who else? Mandy Patinkin. I mean, I'm now personal friends with Mandy Patinkin, which is weird.
What?
So like,
That's crazy.
yeah, like he came in one night. It was super late. I was one of like 2 or 3 geniuses that would get called to the bar to help celebrities because we didn't freak out. So I would just like if I was doing repairs in the basement, management would be like, oh, send Jeremy to the 3rd floor. Someone's here. So
Mandy Patinkin needs a hand.
yeah, so it was late. The store was closed. I was helping him. We were having small talk, and then at the end of it, he asked for my card, and he's like, "Where's your personal number?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you're great. You're my person now. I'm not coming back here ever again." Okay. So then I just started doing tech support outside of work for him, and then we just became friends, and
That's so cool.
yeah, we talk regularly. Like he calls me on my birthday. It's pretty wild. So like meeting someone like Todd is also strange, but it's like I don't know. I've built up this like tolerance to not like freak out.
Yeah. I always think it's funny just because the idea of like I'm not one to get like starstruck, but the idea of like having a creator that you know as this big name or maybe someone you've looked up to or something who then all of a sudden is like, hello peer. It's like that's got to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's what it is the acknowledgement of that I exist. Like when you're helping celebrities, they're just getting help.
Yeah.
But when someone says your name, it's just like, I mean, I know I was able to get a pull quote from BKV for Made in Korea that Image was able to get for me, and I was just
Oh, that's huge.
I was like, wow, you're made. That's amazing.
Wow. That's just so cool. Like I'm happy for you.
Yeah, just the idea that like when we were before we even got to recording, the first book that you mentioned was Why the Last Man. So the idea that you were able to get a pull quote from that creator is like that's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've met him twice. I used to do press, which is how I got into the conventions, and I would get in with the creators, and then I slowly just, as I got to become friends with all these people, I slowly just got rid of my press badge and just was like, I don't do that anymore. I'm trying to be one of you. But it gave me instant access to people. And that's how I met Brian. I mean, I've been friends with Fiona Staples for a long time, and she doesn't really do conventions anymore, and she's not really online anymore. But when she was, I hang out with her whenever we were at the same show, and went out to dinner with her and some friends one night, and then I was able to get an interview with the both of them to discuss Saga. And it was weird where I was told to go to this suite of this hotel. No one's there. And then I hear, oh, are you here for the interview? And there he is, the man himself, walking down the hall. I'm like, hey. And he's like, oh, we're doing it in the lobby. You want to write down to the lobby? I was like, sure. So we're just staying in the elevator. I'm like,
gosh. That's
where I'm like freaking out. And then Fiona's there and she's like, hey, you. And he's like, oh, you two know each other? And I'm like, what's happening right now? And it was a wonderful interview. And then I met him again when he was in Brooklyn for a signing for Saga #1 at Bergen Street Comics, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. But just a nice human. And it's like nice when your heroes are good people.
I met him at New York Comic Con, I think before I did press, I think when I was just a fan for like a signing or something. And he was like just so very, very sweet, which is nice.
So, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to pivot just a little bit because you mentioned your interest in AI. Made in Korea obviously is that sort of story, and you touched upon it a little bit, but I kind of wanted to just pick at it because AI, consciousness, that kind of stuff is like super intrigues me. So like what about it specifically is something that you want to explore outside of just like artificial intelligence and how it works within potentially a child, but what about that and maybe even consciousness is something you want to explore with Made in Korea?
Yeah, there were a lot of influences that went into this story. I mean, like the works of Alex Garland did Ex Machina and Devs for Hulu. Spike Jonze's Her, obviously Spielberg, and Philip K. Dick. So I thought that this was an interesting opportunity to focus on AI, but not just focus on the hard science of it, because to be honest, like hard science doesn't really interest me, or like fantasy science fiction doesn't really interest me. I like grounded sci-fi stuff that feels just outside of our reality, but it's not exactly our present. I think Her is a really good example of that. So focusing on the AI and what does it mean to be human, I think pairs very well with identity of being an adoptee. What does it mean to be blank, Korean, American, a person, and just trying to find the narrative threads of what makes us human, both on a synthetic level and then a very real humanistic level. I think they pair very well together. And I think that the AI was, in my story, I'm trying to use almost to serve as like an analogy or allegory for being an adoptee. And I kind of wanted to view it from that kind of lateral move rather than trying to reinvent what it means. And I think that there are fun ways to explore the human consciousness, not just, oh, they have their own thoughts now, but like, where do those thoughts go? And like, what is identity? Because I think if you take a synthetic child and they start questioning their identity, that is a clear proof of life to me. And they're transgressing their base directives, and they're creating their own thoughts around complex topics that you can't explain or write code for a computer to figure out. And I think that's what will be really exciting, was exciting for me to explore when I was writing the series.
I mean, it was funny because earlier in the conversation, I remember you had said, when you were kind of having those doubts about the book, that like the reveal wasn't enough or something like that. And I remember getting to the last page of this issue, and I was just like, oh no, like maybe not oh no, but it's like you said, the possibilities from where this goes from here are like limitless in really exciting but also potentially very terrifying ways. And I think that's such an interesting conduit for having that conversation creatively about what is the self,
I think it's super apt just because I'm half Puerto Rican, half Ecuadorian, grew up in New York City all my life. So there's a lot there in terms of being able to identify in certain ways and like how you partition yourself amongst that, how you act, how you speak, phrases, words. Like, there's just like so much. And so when you end up having a child question some aspect of that and have it be one that is that, blank slate, like how do you provide them with the information necessary for them to make their own decision, but at the same time, how do they internalize that information? Because that then affects their outward expression about pretty much anything. For you mentioned that you were a little bit less, maybe not accepting, maybe is not the right word, but less willing to engage with your Asian heritage, whereas for me, something similar happened where I was mostly raised Ecuadorian, and slowly over the years, the Puerto Rico diaspora has sort of influenced me a little bit more as I've grown older. Oh. So there's just a lot there that I think makes sense and is right for that kind of storytelling, which I commend you for doing, because it's really, I think, well executed.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think, beyond the general, I think, Pinocchio story everyone thinks of with AI kids, I think that it's for me well beyond that. I mean, just for a synthetic creation to say I am, there's so much more that never gets explored in those stories. I think those narratives I've seen just kind of run off the gas of, well, they're real now. Look how real they are. It's like, what does it mean to be real? Like, what are the choices that are being made? Because we're all individuals and we're all based on our cumulative experiences, and that shapes who we are. And so the one challenge with this book was that I didn't have enough space in the sense of page count to really explore the complex lives of a proxy, which is why I in the print copies, there are 3-page backup stories that I've brought on a different artist to tell their own proxy story within the confines of the world of Made in Korea, just to expose the reader to what are other families doing, and how complex that question is. Like, what does it mean to be a parent? Because everybody's different and they raise their kids differently. So you get to see these glimpses into the life of other proxies, and some are good and some are bad.
You said something that I thought was really interesting, like the concept of, because I am a sucker for an AI that has a personality, but I think so often you veer into, they're human now, and like that feels like such a missed opportunity, right? That the pinnacle of awareness is that like, oh, cool, like I'm just like you now. And it's like, well, no, you're not. Like, you're more than us. Like, sure, great that we can empathize and like share experiences or some kind of commonality. That's great. But their limits would be so much different than ours. They would think so much differently than we would, at least in theory, right? And I always feel like it's disappointing to not necessarily get to explore some of that stuff to its greatest potential. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that with the characters of Bill and Sue Lin, I definitely wanted to write, this couple having very different perspectives on what it means to be a parent. Like, it's clear that Bill is slowly getting on board with all of this, just with his own language of referring to Jesse as it. And Sue Lin has this immediate maternal instinct, which gets explored in subsequent issues. But also that, they don't really know what's going on. Like, the reader knows to a degree, and I didn't want to like over explain it. I think a lot of sci-fi does a lot of exposition, these huge info dumps and this world set up, and it's just like, the stories I like are the ones that the filmmaker or screenwriter or whoever drops you right in the middle of everything, and you just have to sink or swim. Like, figure out what people are talking about, use context clues, use deductive reasoning to figure out what is the scenario. And I thought that was kind of a gamble, and I was concerned most people weren't going to like the story because of that. But surprisingly, I've read quite a few reviews that said that this is a book that has faith and confidence in the reader to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, to reinforce that position, that's exactly how I felt about it. That's something that we often will criticize in issue number 1 for, is feeling like it doesn't trust the reader enough to keep up, so that there's like a lot of, like, let me throw 30 proper nouns at you that you don't know what they mean, and there's no context. You'll figure it out, and it's like, it would have been better if you didn't tell me that and just let me follow what was happening, And
yeah, to me, it's like the equivalent of like when I watch movies with my mom. Sometimes she's like, "What's happening?" And I'm like, "We're watching the movie at the same time. Like, I know as much as you do. Like, we're watching the movie."
It's like, just watch. They'll tell us. I promise. I think that the first issue does a really, really good job of like you said. I think like it establishes a lot of the rules. It leaves us with a lot of questions, but like they're questions that are worth asking, not like, why didn't you tell me this? And I definitely think that that you towed that line very well, because I'm left really interested and intrigued by what's happening, but I'm not quite sure. I've got my theories or whatever, but there's more than enough to chew on here without feeling like you're just spoon feeding it to us.
Yeah, and I like that I've Paul and other people I've heard talk about this issue that they have theories, and that's like, to me, it's like, go on. That's been nice.
Yeah, when I remember when we read this for the show, I had a lot of questions, and there were things that I wasn't clear on, and it wasn't frustrating. I think that's such a difficult thing to balance, especially when you're being introduced to a brand new world, essentially with the concepts that don't exist in our world. It's like, well, how much do I need to know to not be frustrated by what I don't know?
Right.
And I found that I knew enough. And I have some questions that I hope get answered that will enhance the story, and some questions that I don't need to actually have answered, but if they get answered, all right, great. And it's such a great place to fall into a story with, and I highly encourage anyone who's listening to this that hasn't picked it up and is intrigued by our conversation to say, oh, maybe this is worth my time. It's worth your time.
Take the plunge.
Yeah, definitely take the plunge. As Jeremy mentioned, image number 1s are, everyone always picks them up. You never know if it's going to be the next Walking Dead or whatever. And the cool thing too is that you said this is only 6 issues, right? So it's a nice compact story where you're going to get everything here within a few months, right?
Yeah, hopefully. And something that I've noticed a commonality in some of the reviews is, and this is really satisfying to hear, because when it comes to dystopian stories, I'm not interested in the post big event that happens that changes our lives. I think that when it comes to dystopia, for me, the reality is it's happening at such a glacial pace that we don't see it happening. Like, let's use climate change, for example. Like, this is a dystopian event that's going to affect all of us, and we're just kind of like going about our days. And I wanted to write a story where, there is this, foreboding, this like something's not right, but that's not, that's how time works. Like, we're just living our lives. And I didn't want to be this like Terminator situation, because I think that's the lowest hanging fruit. I think that it's more interesting when we're at that precipice of the cliff dive, and like existing there is way more frightening than just trying to survive this, nomadic wasteland, I think.
That's very interesting. I love that. And I wonder, now you have me thinking about future issues, like how much of what you just said is going to play into the rest of the story.
It's funny because I think you mentioned before, like, wanting to start in the middle of the action, and I thought that the choice to start at the birthday party was a really strong decision, because that's like where I feel like you get a lot of the like set dressing about what's going on in the world through conversation. And that moment you just had, Sean, I remember sitting there thinking like, oh, whoa, like what's the implication of that? Like that's really, yeah, there's some interesting stuff there to chew on.
Yeah, there's just so much to explore just with the proxy itself, and the ramifications of what introducing something like that into the world would be like. As someone who works in tech, I think about emerging tech all the time, and I was able to audit this really interesting class at the college in the town that I work in, and they were talking about AI specifically with toys, and apparently there's this very kind of interesting dilemma that Mattel has had, where they developed these Barbies that had some basic AI, so you speak to the Barbie and it had voice prompts, but unbeknownst to the user, to the person buying the doll, is that those conversations were being recorded and uploaded to a cloud. And the conversation now had become, who owns the data and who's responsible for this? Because the data is showing that a lot of kids are being abused, and they're talking to their dolls and confiding in their dolls. And now the company doesn't know what to do. And it's like, well, when you throw something like that in, you've got to blow it out and think of all the scenarios. And I think that with the proxies, something I want to explore in later arcs, which won't get too explored in this first one, is just the consumerism culture we live within. And I see not a very good scenario ending up for these proxies, 20 years down the road.
Right.
Because we're just next best thing. And you want to believe that this is your child, but the reality, it isn't in a way, because some people won't view the proxies as their own or real, or even though they might be lifelike. So yeah, there's a lot to explore and unpack that hopefully George and I get to do in later arcs.
Did you ever watch the Animatrix by chance?
Oh yeah.
The first story, the first story, I can't remember what it's called, but it very much reminds me, or what you said reminded me of that. In that story, the humans have these robots that they have as basically servants. They're the workers, and they're the house cleaners and the housekeepers and things like that. And then everything goes wrong once the robots essentially get tired of being mistreated. And what you're speaking to very much reminds me of that when I think about the idea of human beings being able to have AI as children. I don't have like this book presents that in a way that's very nice, at least in the first issue.
Yeah.
I don't see that I see it happening in spaces, but I'm sure there would be times where people would mistreat.
The reality is I work at a school, and like human kids get abused. Like, this is the reality. Like, not everybody has a great upbringing. And if that's what parents end up doing to their own, biological children, it stands to reason that, the implications could be far worse for a proxy. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm excited to maybe, like I said, explore this thoroughly in other issues, because I do have the second and third arc roughly outlined in my head. Actually, I woke up at like three yesterday morning, and I had more thoughts on the second arc. I was just jotting them down so I could go back to sleep. And I was like, okay, this is great. I'm excited about that.
That's
awesome.
I'm
so excited. I didn't know that there would be more. That's fantastic.
I have to pitch it to Image. I'm not quite sure how that works. So I'll have to have that conversation. I think I'm going to maybe bring it up depending on like how issues, 2, 3, and 4 do. Because I think that might be an indicator to be like, hey, is this a possibility? So yeah.
Well, fingers crossed.
Thanks.
Well, Jeremy, I personally am very interested in your version of a potential future. So I will definitely be here for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and beyond. And hopefully everyone listening will also decide to take that journey. Jeremy is, just based on this one issue alone, one of the creators whose work in Made in Korea and beyond, I'm really excited to read. So definitely give Made in Korea #1 a chance. It's worth your while. We really, really appreciate you coming on, Jeremy. Is there anything that you want to tease the listener with? Let them know where they can find you on social media, the website, all the plugs.
Sure. Social media is pretty easy. It's just Jeremy Holt Books across all social media platforms. My website's the same, jeremyholtbooks.com.
Awesome. I really hope we can have you back when Made in Korea, the first 6 issues wrap. I would love to bring you back and kind of see if my theories were correct and, do all that fun stuff. So hopefully you'll be available for that. But until then, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is an absolute pleasure. I love what you all are doing. And yeah, I'm very excited to talk about your thoughts after the first arc wraps up.
Awesome. We'll hold you to that.
You so much.
Yeah, and for anybody who's ready for that next issue drops on June 30th. So definitely stay tuned. It's only a few weeks away.
And the reprint of issue 1 will be out same day. So if people miss,
awesome!
Yeah,
good. You can grab them both.
Nice. All right. Yes. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us, and we will speak to you again really soon. Thanks again to Jeremy for joining us. That was awesome. Again, I encourage you to buy the book, Made in Korea #1. Check them out. That was a great conversation, and they have a lot more in store. Like, without any spoilers whatsoever, you guys definitely want to get on the train with Jeremy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, before it takes off.
Also, real quick, before we get back to the rest of the show, I had to just point something out. Earlier, Sean, we made fun of Marco and Kale for being, not great at their jobs. Jury's still out on Marco, but I got to give Kale big ups on this one because in the middle of that interview, a spider just attacked him. I don't know if y'all saw that. If you're watching on YouTube, go rewind. When Kale went off, you just see the spider start crawling, and he's just... Boop. Just takes care of it.
True pro.
True pro.
Yeah. Who's bad at their job? Not me.
I rescind. You know what? You're back on top, baby.
Listen, I may be bottom of the barrel, but I'm in the barrel.
Oh, man. We've got so much more show for you guys. We have the typical stack of listener comments. You guys are tremendous. We are really appreciative of that. But then also Marvel dropped a trailer for the new X-Men title that's going to be coming out. Doctor Strange is going to die. ReedPop is getting into the subscription service business for some reason. And we got the Eisner Award nominees. And as per usual, people are pissed. So
it's comics. Why wouldn't they be?
Yeah.
Comics Twitter is mad at something?
Shocking.
2 things.
They're mad about all the things. But before we get into all of that, we've got, as I said, listener comments. So, Pete, why don't you take it away?
All right, so this first one comes from Grayson Red over on YouTube, who commented on episode 241 of the podcast and said, I'm very interested in the new Venom book. I trust both Al Ewing and Ram V, but Brian Hitch's art, no, but there's a little bit of a typo here. It says Brian Hitch's art really doesn't look like it has evolved much since 2005. No disrespect to the legend, though.
That's a really good that's an interesting point, because I'm not sure that I agree that an artist's style has to evolve in order for it to be good. Like, I think if you like Brian Hitch, you like Brian Hitch, right?
Yeah.
And I do. So if Brian Hitch is putting out artwork that looks like Brian Hitch, I'm game.
Mm-hmm.
And I that's all I have to say about that, I guess.
Yeah, I think the style is pretty, like, you can look at it and be like, oh yeah, this looks like Brian Hitch, and I think that's probably positive for him. But I mean, yeah, if they don't necessarily grow over time, that's totally fine. And I feel like sometimes we fall out of a flavor of art more so than an artist changes a style. So
yeah, I mean, you see that all the time, right? Like we talk about and no disrespect intended here either, right? But we talk a lot about like how people will meme about like a Rob Liefeld, right? But like in his day, he was the guy, you know? Tastes change, styles change. So the fact that, someone who you maybe felt like had the hot hand in 2005, Grayson, you're feeling like a little bit spent on that same flavor, over 15 years later. Yeah, I don't blame you for that. That's okay.
It's funny because we actually got a question on the Discord that ties directly into this from Viltrum Warrior, who said, so many comics artists go through an art evolution. Is there anyone where you feel it was an astonishing improvement or degrade? And
yeah, absolutely.
I was reminded of that question through this question from Grayson. And I guess it's tough because, again, I think a lot of times when you're introduced to creators, I won't go as far as to say they're fully formed, but oftentimes they're right around that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because getting
Polished.
into comics, sorry?
They're polished.
Exactly, yeah. Getting into comics is so hard as it is, and it's very competitive. So if you're just like a scrub trying to, make your bones, you're not gonna be on the big stage.
I think what you see more often than that is people who are already polished and like are already competent and then level their stuff up, Jeremy even said something about their collaborator in that way earlier, right? Where like it's not that they were bad. The person that comes to mind for me is Ryan Otley.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, like he's my favorite artist. And you look at what he does today versus the stuff we were, when we did our Invincible book club like 2 months ago or whatever, you can go check it out. That was something that I remember Marco had said where he's like, yo, like Pete always says how much he loves Ryan's art. And like, I was expecting more from it. And I think, Sean, you made the point of, well, I've seen issue 100 and I've seen the shit that he's done that was like the promo art for Invincible during the later days, and it looks night and day different. And not that the volume 1 stuff is bad, but it's not as developed, because he went from being, that was his first ever gig on a monthly comic to then doing a book of Invincible's, quality and volume, right? Every month for 10, 15 years. That was his job. Of course he got better, there's opportunity to really focus on the craft.
Yeah.
I ended up just in response to Viltrum Warrior's comment, I'm a big Eisner fan, and one of the things that for me was his evolution wasn't like a positive or negative necessarily. It was just impressive to see that there was a growth in some direction that was different from what he'd done in the past. The Spirit, super pulpy, a lot of mood with inks and inventive paneling and stuff. Later on, PS Magazine and during the war, a lot of instruction, a lot of just dictating imagery and dictating sort of order. And then later, when he got into his graphic novels, it felt almost like caricatures. And I love that stuff. A lot more inks, only ink, a lot more black and white. And he just kind of played with form, exaggerations. It was interesting to see that growth, and positive or negative. I mean, if it's a flavor.
Yeah. And I think there are probably tons of examples. Everybody's probably got their example. I prefer to focus more on the creators who got better. Especially because somebody like, for example, JRJR, who's the one who came up in conversation on the Discord, which you guys should join. There are a lot of people who love Junior's work, and think absolutely nothing of what other people say, which is that he's gotten worse. So again, it's all subjective for the most part. And, this was a conversation that was huge this week about Herb Trimp.
Yeah.
And, how he had changed his art style to try to match what the Rob Liefelds of the world were doing in the 90s. And that was the death blow to his career and stuff like that. And, I think artists deserve and reserve the right to change and grow and evolve. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily like it, but this is how they're expressing themselves. Creators aren't just factories that produce things for you to look at and take in. That's their journey. Their creation is their journey. So it's kind of weird the way we talk about that stuff sometimes. And the Herb Trimp story is really sad. We don't have the time to dive into that today, unfortunately, but I encourage everyone to go on Twitter and read about it, at least, because it's important to understand that, the things that we meme about, or the things that we dissect, are people's actual lives and their craft, and that deserves to be spoken about in a way that's at least respectful. You don't have to like it, right? You don't have to think it's good or whatever, but respect is important, because it's that person's livelihood. And Herb is no longer with us, but someone decided that it was a good opportunity to take to Twitter and dunk on them, and that's not cool.
Not at all.
I don't think that's ever cool. I don't think it's literally ever cool to dunk on a creator's work, ever, unless it's like tracing or something, like ridiculous. Like we dunked on that one guy for tracing over the I think, what was it? Over
The Where and Go.
Yeah. Like that was disgusting. But outside of situations like that, like just take it easy. Be cool.
Yeah, right. And like for that, we were dunking on him as a person and being a shitbag more even than just the craft. It's like,
right.
There's a way to express that stuff respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's keep moving. Thank you, Grayson. By the way, you are a very regular commenter. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great comment. Thank you for writing in. This next one comes from a friend of the show, Tyler Olson, who says, "Ayo, look at Sean flexing that PS5 in the background." Love this comment.
Okay, so that box has been in the corner of my screen since I got my PS5 in November. So,
Perhaps.
Tyler, you're the first person who's noticed that, and you win a prize. I'm going to send you
A
the box.
PS5.
The box. You can
I
have
need to get rid of it, so I'll send it to you. Thanks for noticing.
All right, this next one comes on. So these are all from the same episode. This is all from last week's show. This one comes from definitely not Sean Soapbox, who says, "I vote for a guest appearance of not Sean Soapbox on the podcast with voice modification, of course, so that you know I'm not Rebecca."
Hey, just go ahead and call her over, Sean. It's probably fine.
First of all, she's sleeping. Second of all, definitely not Sean Soapbox's name should be definitely not Rebecca, because there's a non-zero chance that Rebecca would know George Perez or would even write the next comment that definitely not Sean Soapbox wrote.
See,
Sean,
I like the idea. You said Rebecca's sleeping. I like the idea that Rebecca's like been up all night shit posting as definitely not Sean's soapbox. She's got to sleep in.
I was gonna ask Sean, does she usually sleep during this time?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind then. I had a theory because while you guys were doing the show last week or a week before, a comment popped up that would have been during the recording. So I was trying to from definitely not Sean Soapbox. So Sean usually has the screens up and all that, and I would presume he not have another old episode and take the time out of hosting to type a response on some comment. So I was trying to figure out if maybe Rebecca's somewhere we can scratch her off the list. I'm trying to go down the list.
We're trying to work out who this we're removing suspects at this point.
Okay,
Exactly.
so you think it's me? You think there's a chance?
No.
Me.
I'm saying it's not you because you were hosting at the same time that the comment went up.
Right.
Okay.
You have
I'm
an
going to
alibi.
tell you right now. I know exactly who it is.
Oh,
It's not
interesting.
Rebecca, but I know exactly who it is.
See, my second hypothesis here is that it's Harris.
It's not Harris.
But you
But
know.
you could know. I know. I
You're,
know who
you're
it is.
confident.
I know exactly who it is, and I have hinted at it over and over and over again, and no one has picked up on what I have been saying. There's a hint in this episode.
What?
There is a hint in this episode. I know exactly who it is.
All right. Well, I guess I'll have to listen back to the episode and find out for next week's show.
It hasn't come up yet. That's the crazy part. And it's going to come up, and you're not even going to know.
Fuck.
It's going to happen in very shortly, actually.
Okay. All right. Fine. I'm gonna read the next comment, and maybe that's what we're gonna find out. Okay. So this one also comes from definitely not Sean Soapbox / Rebecca, who said, "I think Kale is the equivalent of Spider-Man 3. Sean would be Infinity War. Phil is Ant-Man. Marco is Thor Ragnarok, and Pete is Guardians of the Galaxy."
That's just hurtful.
Harsh,
I'm Thor
right?
2 at best. I'm Fantastic Four 1. Like, Spider-Man 3?
I think Spider-Man 3 is better than those movies, frankly, but
Well,
Definitely better
I
than
do not.
Fantastic Four 1, at least.
it's better than Thor 2. You don't
Yeah.
think so?
No, you're right. You're right. I'd rather watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Thank
That's-
you.
That's
The
a low
Ragnarok,
blow.
the Ragnarok energy. I appreciate that.
That's a
You
good
know,
one,
I think
Mark.
as much as Phil didn't like that movie, I think Phil is more Thor Ragnarok than he would like to let on.
What?
Not saying that you're not, Marco.
All right.
I'm just saying.
Marco is more Guardians of the Galaxy because he's a space case.
I like
Nice.
that. I like that joke.
Thanks.
Well, definitely not Sean Soapbox. I actually happen to think you nailed all of those. So that tells me that you really pay attention to the show, and you must be someone who's been listening for a very long time.
What it tells me is that Sean and Kale don't like me very much.
I like you a lot.
Guardians of the
I
Galaxy, though.
I could take that.
Kale can take me or leave me. That's fair. All right, we'll move on to this next one. This one comes from Garrett Harshman over on our YouTube review, or the YouTube episode of our Strange Adventures 10 review. So Garrett wrote in and said, Tom King books must be difficult to review because they always seem to start off dull or all over the place. Excuse me. But he seems to be really good at bringing it all together in the third quarter. Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of expressed that throughout Strange Adventures. There have been some of us who have would have rather had read it in a chunk rather than month to month because of the way that Tom tends to, kind of have a bit of a slow burn. But I definitely agree that it feels like it's coming together now.
I think to that, Rorschach's probably a good example of him doing that, where you kind of just start out no idea what's going on, and slowly pieces of the puzzle start falling in. You get different threads that start tying together, and the big thing I think for Tom King is him sticking a landing. I felt that way a little bit with Mr. Miracle, and I'm hoping that the build up for Strange Adventures would be where it's at, and he'll deliver. And I'm hopeful. We have 2 issues left, so I I think so. And the same, I feel like I'm getting a similar vibe for Rorschach, where I feel like that book he's really tight on. So I'm super hopeful. We'll see.
I definitely agree that Tom King books are tough to review, just because sometimes things just don't happen. And it's like, damn, how do I even discuss this? And you could personally have enjoyed it or not enjoyed it or whatever. But to talk about it, to review it, can be challenging sometimes. And that's not just true for Tom King books. There are several titles that we have reviewed and then been like, you know what? This is not like, we're not able to find enough to pull at for every issue of this series. And we've dropped them from the review slate because we just didn't think that it was that interesting. The Tom books, like we reviewed Rorschach. Did we review Rorschach one?
I don't think we did. I think that was
we did.
We did?
We did.
Okay, I must have been off that week.
And we did Batcat.
Yes.
But they just didn't feel like they should be reviewed in that way. They felt like they needed to be experienced, as one piece. Just individual issues weren't giving enough.
Mm-hmm.
Strange Adventures is a book that we've had really hot conversations about on this show, and it wouldn't feel right if we didn't, in my opinion, if we didn't finish reviewing the entire series from start to finish. And I've been enjoying it, even though I didn't enjoy every single issue. So,
yeah, I agree.
And by the way, thanks for writing in, Garrett Harshman. Really appreciate when you write in.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, so these next two come from our discussion on Geiger number 3, both over on YouTube. This first one comes from Kilgore Trout, another regular writer into the show. Thanks again for writing in, Kilgore. It's really funny to thank someone named Kilgore, by the way. I love the internet.
And either way that you go about it, right? Like whether you say Kilgore or Trout.
Thanks, Trout. Yeah, either way, it's kind of weird. But yeah, so Kilgore wrote in and said, 3 issues in and I'm still waiting for the hook. I was expecting more from Geiger and it hasn't lived up to expectations. Something needs to happen for me to continue beyond the next issue.
Sounds like Kilgore's Kale.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing now. We're gonna try to figure out how every one of our commenters is one of us. I think some people listen to the show. Don't worry.
I'm from Texas, so that means I'm George Bush. Like, what is
Oh boy, that's funny. Yeah, so we reviewed Geiger. You guys can go check that out. We reviewed Geiger 3, and Kale and I generally agreed in the sense that we felt like they kind of blew it up. They gave away kind of what felt like the major hook. We don't need to go into spoilers here, but they gave it away, and it feels now like the book has to pivot and find a direction that can take the interest level that we had in what the hook seemed like it was and absorb that.
Mm-hmm.
And the third issue didn't provide us with a hint as to what that would be. So I'm not interested in the book anymore, but I can definitely say that if the next couple of issues don't really put pedal to the metal, I probably won't have as much interest in continuing on with it.
Cool. This next one comes from Willie Survive, also on Geiger 3. And I do just want to, there's slight spoilers in this comment. I don't think that they're significant enough for us to not read them. But if you haven't read Geiger 3 and you're insane about spoilers, skip ahead a couple seconds. So Willie wrote in and said, I think the writers finished the mystery about his family and the king because they have something else in mind. I think the direction of the book will be about the kids, the map, and this new world. Hopefully some new characters will be introduced, but basically Geiger's origin and motivation for what he does has been put to bed.
Cool. I'm not into it.
I think
why is the book called Geiger then,
I think you're probably right. But it felt, I'll say this, you're probably right. It felt very anticlimactic, if that's the case. And it felt very unlike Jeff Johns, who I have a ton of respect for as a creator who knows what they're doing. So it didn't live up to what Jeff Johns' standard of quality, for lack of a better term, in my opinion.
We'll have to see how we feel about number 4.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks again for writing in.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Will he survive? That's a great fucking name, by the way. Great
Looks
screen
like
name.
looks like he made it another day.
I was gonna do it, but I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna take us there. Glad you did it, Pete. Let's get into the pals polls, and we'll start with Marco, who chose Alien number 4.
All right. I love Alien. Alien in comics can sometimes be a little bit difficult to portray, like the horror of it. I think Philip K. Johnson has been doing a pretty good job of weaving in a fun narrative, doing a good job with the horror, and Salvador LaRocca on art. And his people, the faces, I feel like are waxy sometimes. I don't like the structure, but the aliens, amazing. Like the way he draws them are incredible. If he's using references, if he's doing whatever, I don't care. That shit looks fire. And I'm in it for the way he's able to represent those aliens and for the narrative that Johnson's telling. And if it goes down sort of the route that I think it ends in issue 5, I'll be content.
You know, I listened to your review of issue 1. I wasn't on the show that particular day, and I bought the issue, and then I listened to the review, and I was like, oh, okay, you guys didn't like it, so I won't buy it anymore. And I didn't read the first issue. I bought it just because I wanted to get it, that I didn't get around to it, whatever. So I didn't buy any of the further issues. And then like a couple of weeks ago, I read the first issue. I was like, oh shit, I actually really enjoy this. This is really good.
You did? No.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Nice.
Sorry, we led you
damn.
astray.
I missed out on 2 and 3 because I trusted the Comics Pals, my own show. And now I feel like I screwed up.
Yikes. Well, that's why we all got to be on the reviews, I guess.
That's the gamble. You trust the Comics Pals, you miss your books.
Mm-hmm. Marco also chose Berserker number 3.
I've been having fun with this. We'll see where it goes. Second issue was him in the past and kind of like through the ages, but not a lot there story-wise. So hopefully they get to do a little bit more with the character, and I mean, I'm having fun with it. I'll support it. It's a fun book so far.
Okay. Kale chose Madman Library Edition Volume 1. What is this?
So Madman is Mike Allred's creator-owned baby. It's about a zombie named Frank N. Stein who becomes a superhero. His weapon is a yo-yo. He's got a girlfriend. He changes a costume every 10 minutes. It's incredible. It's been around, I don't know, since the 90s, and they're really hard to find. They've come out with a few different editions. I've got one somewhere, but tremendous stuff. And so this is a hardcover that I will definitely be getting.
That's awesome. I love whenever we get these kinds of things, hardcovers, collected editions for stuff that's difficult to find. In fact, it's worth pointing out that Marvel is finally putting Truth and Justice, I believe it's called, back into print, which is the story of the Black Captain America.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I saw that.
Isaiah Washington, I think that's his name.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Isaiah Bradley.
Isaiah Bradley.
Okay.
They're putting that back into print. So if you've been wondering where that is, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Bless you.
Oh, bless you.
Fun fact, Madman actually makes a cameo in Invincible at one point.
Oh, wow.
He's in Crossover too, if I'm not mistaken. The Donny Cates book.
Huh.
Oh, cool.
He's,
That's literally all I know about him. I know his costume.
full
it.
body white costume with a red exclamation point that looks kind of like a lightning bolt.
Yeah,
I was
great
asking
looking
Marco, I guess he
character.
didn't see it.
You also chose Ultra Mega number 4.
So this is the end of the arc, which I'm wildly disappointed about because I'm having a blast with Ultra Mega.
I know. I'm sad it's going away.
I don't think we're reviewing it this week because we've got a fat stack of stuff to review from you guys. But because we have the access, thank you so much, Image. I read it early, and guys, it gets gross.
Yeah.
But it's cool as hell.
It's intense.
So if you have been into what we've done, what the series has been so far, it's tremendous.
Nice. I wonder what the future is for that series.
He's based on the back matter, he's working on more, but it's probably not going to come out until next year at this point because it seemed like he was working on this for years.
Let's see.
That's fine.
If he takes his time and it's good, I'll take it whenever it comes.
Yeah.
So Pete and I actually had the exact same pulls. Static number 1.
Yeah, let's go. We've been kind of talking around this for a while. Obviously, there's the Milestone return. We had the 0 issue a couple months ago. And now the most recent update was that it will be physical as well as digital day 1. So however you read your books, you'll be able to pick it up this week. But yeah, season 1 kicks off. It's written by Vita Ayala. We got art by Chris Cross and Nicholas Draper Ivy. I'm really excited about this. I love Static. Was a big fan of Static Shock as a kid. It was event television for me on Saturday mornings. And I have, said a lot on this show how I think it's really a shame that, rights issues have kind of kept the character in, this weird limbo, basically since the end of that show. And, you look at how many young, teen heroes we have coming up who are people of color. And it's Static had the hot hand so long ago. And it's you could see that legacy kind of get passed on to other characters like Miles Morales and some of his contemporaries. So the idea that, it seems as if everything's figured out and there's an opportunity now to give a push for Static again. I want to show up for it and be behind it. So I really, really hope that this first issue is great. I hope that everybody goes and picks it up and we can send the message to DC that we want to see more Static.
I'm excited. I don't have a connection really to Static, but I think that, the time is now. The time is now. The time is right. I'm happy that DC made the right decision to make this digital and physical day and date. That means that I can jump on board alongside everybody else and be as excited about this as everybody else. I hope it's good. I hope it's very high quality. Vita Ayala is obviously very talented and capable. So I think the title, the character's in good hands, and the preview artwork that has been pushed out is tremendous.
Looks really good.
So, and I personally have been following Nicholas Draper Ivy for years now, and this is their first at bat for a major publisher in a big time way.
Yeah, I remember you saying
that. Yeah, but they've been killing it forever, for almost a decade now. So, yeah, I'm hyped. And then Planet-Sized X-Men. Obviously, this is the big one, right? I can't wait for this book. We're gonna be you'll have access to our review of X-Men 21 and Excalibur 21. We're following the gala very closely, and this seems like it's going to blow the lid off of some major truths about what the X-Men are up to. I have theories. I don't want to talk about them on this podcast because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, and plus you got to listen to our reviews to hear all that good stuff. So check out our review of X-Men 21. We will be reviewing Planet Size X-Men when that drops. And yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I
It's
am really
gonna be
looking
great.
forward to this one. Super excited to see just some of the preview stuff for it already is like looking great. Obviously not a surprise to see Pepe Larraz doing radical work, but yeah, it's exciting time.
Indeed. Speaking of the X-Men, though, we do have a trailer that they pushed out for the new X-Men title. Before we jump into that, I do want to say every single week I've been putting out for the last couple of weeks, I've been putting out a challenge for you guys to let me know if there's a book that you think I'm not reading that's not a trade or a manga that I can pick up at the shop. And actually, I believe it was Kafis on the Discord who took
Yep.
the challenge and recommended me to read Maniac of New York. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to grab that this week, but I promise that next week I will have my thoughts on Maniac of New York, and I will not just read whatever the most recent issue is. I'm going to read the whole thing, and I will have my thoughts for you on the show next week about that. Thank you for taking my challenge, and I encourage more of you to do it.
Nice.
But
Beautiful.
let's chat a little bit about this trailer. I'm going to go ahead and throw it up on the screen for you guys that are watching on YouTube. And we're just going to, chat it up about this new trailer. I personally have always been a fan of Marvel's trailers for comics. I think they're really cool. And this one didn't disappoint. This is that sweet, sweet Pepe Larraz artwork.
Mhm.
Jerry Duggan is going to be writing this series. Look at Jean Grey, the greatest X-Men of all.
Yeah, the Larraz art, I think I'm ready to see more of what he has for the X-Men for this world. I loved his designs. I love his art. I'm ready.
I'm a little bit. The fact that they could get him for this makes me disappointed that the X-Men didn't have him as the artist the whole time.
I wonder if there was some conflict with like something else going on or whatever, like other work, maybe some creator-owned stuff they were working on or something. I don't know.
I wonder if this isn't connective tissue with Hoxpox stuff though, where you get like a continuity of that art style where you're just coming into Hoxpox and then you like the X-Men generally. And so as the book diverts, as the Hickman book diverts into something else, and then this continues sort of that artistic style. I wonder if there's something like just there to allow for people to have a little bit of that familiarity.
I think that there is probably merit to that, and then I would add that because Hickman's stories weren't in the X-Men title weren't necessarily linear. They were very different. Like every issue was different. They didn't even necessarily tell the same story. Having a diverse group of artists made sense for that title. Whereas this one seems to just be more about the superheroics. And I definitely see Larraz thriving in that environment. So when I actually think about it, I guess, yeah, it does make sense.
Didn't Pepe Larraz do some of Empire as well with Al Ewing in that event?
That was Valerio Schiti.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of Marta Gracia then.
Maybe. I think that's right.
Yeah, I know Valerio was on it, but there may have been an additional artist. So you could be right about that. I'm gonna check while we discuss this. This trailer doesn't really give us too much as far as like what we can expect from the title, other than it appears to be a more traditional X-Men series. But I could be reading a lot into a little. I don't know.
No, it definitely has that vibe. It looks like it's a lot more action focused.
It does seem like it has that vibe, but I guess it's possible that could just be like a red herring, like it wants us to think that it's a more traditional book.
Yeah. I'm really not sure, but
Whatever
I'm
the fuck
really
that
excited.
that is in the beginning is very like
I
what
know.
is that?
She looks like a Pokemon.
That's some Pokemon. What do
Yeah,
you guys think
I don't know what
about?
Pokemon you're playing.
Genesect.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
you know
all
what?
right, I see that.
You know what?
Yeah.
I take it back. You're right. It does kind of look like
My
Genesect.
man knows.
Look at this squad, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good fucking lineup.
I
Yeah.
don't know, man. If it's not a generally standard X-Men lineup, I'm uninterested. I just can't get into it.
I mean, two of them are as standard as it
He's
gets.
memeing. He's memeing.
I'm not memeing. I'm completely serious.
Are you really?
Yeah.
There's Beast in there.
Huh.
Three of them are like the most standard members of the team.
Okay, well, what about the rest of them?
And one of them is a Wolverine stand-in, so
Yeah.
is-
4
And the
out of
rest?
6. It's pretty good.
What is Sync's power again?
Um,
Isn't it that he can copy other people's powers?
I think or enhance them, something like that.
I'm gonna check really quick.
I forget. But
I think his is the copying because I feel like it was
The other guy that can enhance.
yeah,
Hmm,
and Sync was copying Laura's abilities and stuff.
yeah.
Because isn't that how he survived at the end?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Ability to duplicate superpowers. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
I gotta say, I kind of agree with Kale.
Really?
Yeah. I'm definitely more fan of traditional teams, whether it's the League, the Justice League, the Avengers, the X-Men. I really like the core group of characters. I care about Polaris, so I'm happy that she's here. But I feel like the main X-Men title should be primarily about the superstar X-Men. Like, where's Storm? Storm 100,000% should be on this team. There's no doubt in my mind.
That's fair.
And yeah.
And for me, in the case of like X-23 being the Wolverine, like, okay, cool. That's sort of a stand-in for that character. There'll be reasoning for that character to be in that position. Cool. I'm down with that. But then, Sunfire has a history with the X-Men, but it's
Fringe.
different enough.
Yeah, right. He's usually not a main team person. He's usually like a B team type guy.
Yeah. I don't really care about Rogue
Okay.
That's
in
insane.
general.
That's
I-
insane.
But
to me.
then Sync is just like I haven't seen enough to care about him or
I don't know.
Polaris.
I guess I get what you're saying. I just think it's odd because it's like, to me, it's like we've got three, I would say, A tier X men, and then we've got Laura and Sync, and Laura's cool. Like you said, I like her fine. And that as a stand-in for Wolverine on the team works for me. But like her dynamic with Sync that we had established in the
Yes.
the two Vault issues is something that like I'm excited to pull on a little bit more, which I think makes me care about that character more. So really, it's kind of like Cannonball's kind of like the odd man out, I guess. Sunfire. But even he, it's like I don't feel like he's like a nobody.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a nobody, but
You just
Would
feel like
I-
you want some more A-listers?
yeah, would I prefer like a tank like Colossus? Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Or someone who's gonna Sunspot, he can heat things up. I don't see the friction yet. And I think
Sunfire.
Sunfire, I'm sorry, yeah. I don't see the
Fucks
friction
you
yet.
up.
And so I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Mm.
But X-Men books tend to be dramatic, and so I'm wondering where that tension is going to come from on the team. I'm sure it'll be present, and it's not as if X-Men books are known for sticking to the characters who are in the number one. So
Sure.
we'll see how things play out.
The Sync Laura
yeah.
thing, I think, could definitely inject some needed drama into it.
Yeah, for sure.
given that whole dynamic that's been established now, where he has all these memories and she's got nothing.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably why they're on the team, is so that they can continue that story and build them and build that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're almost 100% correct on that, I would imagine. Speaking about the X-Men, just a quick little note, Marvel did release a little bit more information about Inferno, and all they really said was just that Inferno was going to be the the tragic conclusion, I believe is the word they used, for the story that the ride we've been on with Hickman's X-Men. I hope that this is not the end of his story.
Yeah.
I really, really hope it's not over with Inferno. Yeah. But we don't have long to wait. Next week is Planet Size X-Men, as we said, and couldn't be more excited. And I guess technically this week. So yeah, we'll be reviewing that. Definitely stay tuned for that when that comes out, because we're very excited about it. Doctor Strange is going to be dying.
Yeah, and
The Death of Doctor Strange comes out September 2021. Jed McKay and Lee Garbett will be telling the story over 5 issues. It's going to kill the good doctor, and there's going to be a mystery. And then we're going to have to figure out who the next doctor will be.
magic.
Yeah. Magic?
They've been predicting that for years.
I wonder if it's not Miss Marvel. Hasn't she been in like Strange Academy and all that stuff?
Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel?
Sorry, Captain Marvel.
I don't know if she's been in Strange Academy, but
she has.
Has she?
Yeah.
I know she and Strange are dating now, I guess.
Right.
Oh, she's gonna kill him and become the Sorcerer Supreme.
That would be
All right.
different.
That would be really crazy.
I'm not sure if it is relevant, but it's worth pointing out that the Darkhold story that we talked about last year, at the height of the pandemic, it was teased by Marvel, never came out. It's actually going to be coming out and starting and ending around the same time as this. So I wonder if she's not a candidate for becoming the next Sorceress Supreme, I guess.
I just looked up Lee Garbett's art, and this dude has got it.
Yeah.
So that could be worth checking out.
Yeah. I'm actually not familiar with Lee's work.
It looks like he did the Loki Agents of Asgard book.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. I see. Yeah. This is quality stuff. I'm not familiar with either creator, and I don't necessarily care if Doctor Strange is going to die. Marvel has done a lot of death of, X characters, or stories rather, over the years. And I'm really not, I don't know. It feels like a gimmick now. And I don't care anymore when they do this. I don't care when characters die anymore.
It especially feels it to me. Like the first thing that comes to mind is the upcoming movie.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Schumer Garoth is going to be in this. If you look at the cover,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be involved. Like I just mentioned, Scarlet Witch is going to be, one of the main characters in a book called Darkhold. Of course, we all know how WandaVision ended. We know the Strange Wanda connection. Going into the movie, like you said, it feels very much like they're telegraphing their play here. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little frustrating because I like my comics to be the comics and the movies to be the movies. And it feels super obvious what's going on. But does anybody care about the idea of Doctor Strange dying?
Not really. I think like what you said kind of sums it up. Where like, you know, in the last couple years, we had death of Wolverine, we had death of like we've done this before, and really the only one that's ever stuck is Marvel, right? So they're not gonna kill off Doctor Strange. They're not
forever.
Right. It's not gonna happen. So, I don't know. Like, it's one of those things that I feel like I just wish that, and I've expressed this before, I wish they would just stop announcing shit like this, like, and just let it happen, because when you announce it, I think it puts expectation on it, it puts pretense on it, and it makes you think, who's going to replace him? What's that going to be like? And all these questions that are like, ultimately, it's just comic shit. So it's like, if it's good, great. Like, if we have a moment that is like, like what happened when they killed off Thor, right? And Jane Foster picks up the hammer, and then that's a run that, it proved itself, and some people like it. So now it's a thing that we've hung on the hat as, okay, this can stay because it was good. But if it's not, or if it's something that doesn't resonate, it's going to get undone and it won't matter. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, like, yeah, it's hard to get excited about it, because until it's like a material thing that we can read and say, oh, this is good or has promise, it's like, okay, it's the next thing. Let's see.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think in this case, the fact that this is the title of the book, this is the book, might be a little bit different in the sense that, they're clearly not trying to shock you.
Right.
And I wish they would, like, kill him in the Darkhold event, kill him in Infinite Destinies, kill him in something where I can open the book and not already know what to expect.
Yeah, I want to turn the page and be like, oh my God, not, oh, this is the death of this character? Okay, great, you spoiled it.
Right. Wait for issue 2 where you spoil the ending of that one too.
Yeah.
And then 3 years from now, when we get the rebirth of Doctor Strange, just in time for the second Doctor Strange, or the third Doctor Strange movie. Great.
Exactly. It's just, it's very, very frustrating, Marvel. So please don't do that anymore. Let's shift gears over to DC and talk about Fables. Now, Fables is a book that I have never read. I actually bought my girlfriend a hardcover edition that she has never read. And I thought,
too busy commenting on the show.
Right, of course. You know what, Kale? I'm going to pivot for a second because I need to address you.
Oh.
If you were as smart as you think you are,
listen,
you would already know who Definitely Not Sean Soulbox really is.
I have a guess.
Yeah? Who is it?
Yeah, I have a guess. Oh, you can keep your cards close to chest. I'll keep mine.
Okay, sure. I mean, this is only going to end one way, with the exposure of the individual, right?
Sure.
So,
listen, we all know I'm not afraid to look in the fool.
So then go ahead. Say who it is.
Is it Link?
No.
Is it not?
No.
Right. They said they
and by the way, just saying the name of every single person who writes into the show is not going to work for me.
Okay.
At some
first
point,
of all,
I'm stop
first of
responding.
all, I did very deep investigation. That person has been listening to the show. They're new to the Discord, so it's a very educated guess. Thank you very much.
That's what
I think it's Matt Murphy. I'm throwing it out.
I'm okay. That's probably not correct, but I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to give you one hint, and I already gave it, so it's not even new. They're not new.
They're an old listener.
I was working off the hint you just gave.
They're not new in any way.
It's Phil then.
Yeah. Let's talk about Fables.
While we're here. Last week, we had a host showdown, which I think I'll have you know, I think I did really well. But I'll concede. The true host is the person who can remember to select the correct microphone.
That's definitely Sean. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I've got anything, I've got that. I'm offended that you think you held your own, Kel.
You said it yourself in the episode. I did great.
That's
I
called.
didn't say you did a good job hosting. I said you did a great job being my partner for the day.
That is not what you said.
Did I? Did I
I said
compliment
there
you?
was a point. It was while we were looking at the numbers for Jupiter's Legacy.
Hmm.
And I was looking at it. You said, "Don't look at it." I said, "I'm sorry. I'm trying to host the show." And you said, "You're doing a great job."
Okay. I was memeing. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So Fables is a book that, I mean, really highly celebrated. Bill Willingham is one of the creators behind it. It ended 6 years ago from Vertigo, and now it's coming back, if you can believe that. And the weirdest part about it is that it's coming back in two ways. So first, they're going to have Batman versus Bigby. I assume Batman versus Bigby, a wolf in Gotham. It's a 6-issue series.
Oh, okay.
I assume that Bigby is a character from Fables, from the world of Fables.
He is. Bigby is. I only know this because I played the Telltale game. Bigby's the main character. He's the big bad wolf.
Cool. That's actually really cool. It's going to be a Black Label series, and Willingham is actually going to write it along with artist Brian Level. And the art looks really awesome, so I encourage you to go check that out. But then, on top of that, they're also just going to bring Fables back from issue 151. Like they're just gonna pick right up from where they left off.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's really surprising, though.
I've never they could easily just go with a new number one, and they're not, and that's so interesting.
That's really cool. Yeah, this is a book that I've always wanted to read and just never took the plunge on. And I loved the Telltale game, so maybe now's the time to pick it back up. Give it a shot.
It's very good. I read the first 3 volumes of it, and there's 22 volumes because it's so long. But from just that, it's really quality stuff.
Lots of talking animals. Seems like a Sean book.
Lots of talking animals. Yep.
I mean, I bought it for my girlfriend, but she doesn't care, so I might have to read it to make it worth my while.
Yeah, man, crack that open.
When's it come out?
Yeah.
The new one?
So the 151 drops May of 2022, so we've got a year to wait for that.
We got a whole year to catch up and read the whole thing. Wow. Let's go. Book club.
For the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, the 20th anniversary, shit. Absolutely. So really cool. I'm curious to know how many of our listeners have read Fables, because I know that it was popular, but I've not really heard anyone in my life ever talk about it.
I don't know one person who's read it. Except, actually,
Harris
maybe
is a fan.
Harris read it.
News to me.
I think maybe Andy has read it as well, but I think that was because of The Wolf Among Us, the Telltale game.
I think Murphy might have as well.
I didn't even realize that was a Fables-based game.
The Wolf Among Us. I think it's a prequel, but it is canon.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Very interesting.
It's good. Really good.
I don't know how much I care about the Batman thing, though. That seems a little random to do a Batman Bigby crossover. But it's a way of getting the character and the brand in front of people who might not otherwise be interested or know about it. So
yeah. It's one of those things where it's it doesn't necessarily feel like the most appropriate thing for that series, but it is also a thing where it's well, I feel like Batman can cross over with pretty much fucking anything, you know? Right. I've kind of always felt that way about Batman, though. I feel like Batman is probably the arguably the most malleable character in the Western canon. You know, you can kind of shove him in any situation and just be like, what's Batman gonna do?
Yeah, absolutely. If nothing else, it'll be interesting, and I'm excited for 151. They did say that DC described it as a continuation of the story, but also simultaneously a great jumping on point for new readers. That could be a lie, but it's probably not. Like, I'm gonna buy this for sure. So
I think the thing that is most interesting to me is, you know, I like I said, I've never read Fables, but like because I really liked The Wolf Among Us, like I've read a bit about it, and I remember paying attention to when it was ending. And you know, it didn't end because of any other reason than because the creative team was like ready to put it to bed. So the fact that it's coming back now and picking, you know, seemingly picking up where it left off or whatever, that's like pretty exciting, you know? Like it's cool to see a creator come back to like their kind of magnum opus that they had put to bed because they're like, you know what? Turns out I have more to say. You know?
Right.
That's cool. That doesn't really happen very often. I hope it's good.
And it is a gamble because, you know, Fables has a pretty good reputation. And apparently they left it off at a really great point. If you come back to that and, you know, let's say it's just not as inspired or, you know, whatever, it's not as good, that could hurt the legacy of the book. And, you know, presuming that this creator maybe has the rights to it or something, that could hurt their pockets down the road. If the book is less popular because they brought it back and it just wasn't as good.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's the other side of that coin, right? Is that like it could come back and find a new audience and potentially, you know, get another, you know, get an adaptation to something that's a little bit more mainstream. Like, who's to say?
Well, they found me with this announcement because I don't know when I was going to get to it otherwise, but now it's in my mind. So I'll definitely be picking this up, and I've got the hardcover, so I'll read that too. Yeah, cool stuff. Let's talk about something wildly different. So Substack is in the news recently, and comics Twitter is lit up about them. So it's likely if you're listening to me now, you don't know what Substack is, because I didn't know what Substack was until this week. Substack is essentially a business that brings on writers to do newsletters that people then pay for. So it's a way to get you paid for newsletters that you put out.
I don't think you have to pay for them.
You don't.
Yeah,
You don't,
okay.
but you can.
It's a lot like Medium. You might be more familiar with if you're listening. Like it's basically they host people's newsletters.
Yes.
Okay.
In the way that YouTube, you know, could host your video channels or whatever.
And so they have decided to jump into comics. And so they've gotten into bed with Nick Spencer to basically get him to pitch the idea of comic book writers joining Substack. And essentially what that would look like is they would upfront you money to hire a creative team to work on a book that they would put out through Substack. And the model of payment is the first year they recoup the money that they invested in you and the creative team. And then after that, they only take 10% of whatever your earnings would be from the second year onward. Now, Substack has come under fire in the past for what is alleged to be anti-trans, not policies, but bringing on writers who are allegedly anti-trans, and not being transparent with the actual earnings, because they're not a publishing company. They're a technology business that is using or hosting people's creative work, but they themselves have nothing to do with creativity. And so a lot of people theorize that they actually like fake subscriptions, basically, to inflate the amount of money that's actually going into the pockets of creators from fans, similar to how Facebook was lying about the number of clicks and views that videos were getting, that news sites were putting up, and it completely screwed the industry. We don't know if that's true or false with Substack, but that's a rumor. So to take it back to comics, they're teaming up with Nick Spencer. He's the pitch man to get writers to come on board. The reason why people are pissed is because the presentation of this idea is that writers are the primary point person in a creative team. They're only hiring writers. The writers go and find the artist and the letterer and everybody else, put a team together to tell the story of the writer's vision, and then Substack puts it out, or they put it out via Substack. That's why people are so upset. The assumption that comics is a writer-first industry. Kale, you're making a face. Do you have a response?
No.
Okay. Next story then.
That was the most loaded no I have ever heard.
Well, I don't know. I can
Speak it.
I can see that point of view from the people who are upset at Substack, but I also feel like I can see the point of view from Substack in regards to the writer being sort of the point person. I kind of, it's tough because like, I guess, is Substack gonna turn away artists who come to them with a good idea or an assembled team and they're the point person? I don't know. I have weird conflicting thoughts about that because and I don't want to speak broadly, but like mostly the writer kind of is, right? Like, I guess you could make an exception about like editors who, keep everything on track and, maintain communication and get the book together and things like that. But again, that could be anybody on the team. But mostly it's the writer who, has that initial idea and then seeks out the team for collaboration. So maybe the issue is one of collaboration.
So, you know what? Go ahead, Pete. Yep.
I think I am inclined to I don't necessarily even want to say agree with what Kale's saying, because like I feel like you're not necessarily making like drawing a line in the sand, but
I'm talking it out because I feel very of two minds about it.
Yeah, and I think I get where you're coming from, and I think as much as I understand where the critics are coming from as well, I'm inclined to feel like this feels like a story of a little bit of much to do about nothing, where it's like when you think about what Substack is in its current what it is today, right? Mm-hmm. And they have this desire to expand into comics. Substack is a writer's platform, right? Like the platform is about writing. It's about following writers who cover a specific thing that you're interested in. And basically, like, when I think of Substack, I think of its primary purpose as being for independent journalism right now. And, them wanting to expand into other areas and getting into like fiction and doing comics and trying to foster other areas of interest within their community. That makes sense for them as a platform. And for them to want to expand out to other writers because that's who they've historically worked with, that makes sense to me too. That doesn't feel as much as of a snub on like artists as much as I feel like people are maybe making it out to be. And who's to say? I might be speaking out of turn, whereas, we learn more about the company and how they operate. And, if there is a situation where, it's an artist who has a vision and comes to them and they're like, oh, well, we're not interested in that. Sure, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But on the onset, that doesn't really feel like anything, because the idea that, like, it's a writer coming with a story to pitch, yeah, that's generally how it works. And if it's the artist with the one who if the artist is the one who has the pitch, and then they go and get a writer to write the script, like, there's a path forward for that, right? Like, we've seen that in comics before. They get a co-creator credit. Maybe they get a co-writing credit, even though it's story by, script by. That happens all the time. So as long as they're open to that, that doesn't feel like a snub at all. It feels like probably coming more from a place of ignorance than from, like, them making some kind of statement.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very much like this is how they operate from a business perspective anyway. So to bring in a comic writer to help them with a comic initiative, it's on Substack's end, presumably business as usual, because you work with those writers outside of comics just generally, right? Like, that is the platform. So because you're doing that, you're moving that same model to comics. And I think if down the line, it's probably like they'll have a transitional period where, hey, won't just be the writer as a point person. It'll be anybody amongst the team who has something worth that they feel and that Substack feels is worth putting out there. But as of right now, if this is how they operate regularly and they're just looking to expand out, they're just working within the confines that they always have been. And if that's not necessarily prioritizing an artist or giving that priority to a writer at this point, I'd agree that it's an ignorance piece of, well, there are other ways to do it, but this is how we've always done it. Right now, this is what works. This is what we're gonna do, but for comics.
So, for the sake of presenting the argument appropriately, I'm going to assume the role of those who have been critical of this. So, first of all, this is comics, and comics is as collaborative a medium as there is. And it's weird to want to get into comics as Substack, but know so little that you don't even realize that, or that you don't realize how that would come across to the creators who you need to court to do this work. Because it's not only artists who would be offended by that, because a lot of writers in the industry understand, the need obviously for artists, and might not be comfortable working with Substack just because of the bad first impression. Comics creators are, sensitive, as all creators are, and it's easy to put people off when you approach them this way. I think that it would have been a lot easier and have made a lot more sense if you're going to collaborate with Nick Spencer on this to say, hey, reach out to creators in general and put the word out that we're doing this, not just writers. And open that door. Because if all they are is an idea farm and that's all they want, ideas can come from anybody. It doesn't have to be the writer who has the idea. What if an artist comes to them with an idea that's fully fledged and put together and has a writer attached? Does the writer have to be the one to present the idea in order for it to get over? That's a little weird. So I think that there's a lot of ways they could have approached it differently. I'm also not surprised that creators in general would be opposed to the idea of a tech company coming into the fray and saying, yeah, we're going to use your ideas to for essentially just for content. It comes across as hollow, and that's not the kind of thing that comics creators are going to be inherently inclined to be interested in. So I think those are the primary things that I saw as what people were saying. As far as my opinion on it, I do think there's a level of sensitivity that is high that doesn't need to be. But at the same time, comics artists should get more. They don't get enough recognition sometimes,
Yeah.
and that doesn't feel great. And this feels probably like yet another slight. And I saw creators that I respect, artists that I respect very much, essentially saying that.
Yeah, and I despite what I said earlier, which I do stand by, like I think that I also get that, because I think that I do think that there are a lot of instances where comic artists are treated like second class creators, you know? Like they it reminds me a lot of the way that like you'll see people talk about like bands, right? Where it's like the lead singer and the rest of the band, you know, or like, oh, this guy's the band leader, they're the important person, and everybody else is, you know, yeah, they're in the band, they're along for the ride, but they're not as important. And I think that comic artists are often treated that way. We talk about how colorists, nobody even knows their names, you know. Letterers, like, please, they're not getting their name read out. That's not happening. But like, it reminds me of like just like a week or so ago, I saw somebody in our sphere retweet this, where the Amazon Prime account had tweeted about Invincible and was like, oh, like, you know, we big thanks to Robert Kirkman for creating both the Invincible comic and the TV show. And then someone retweeted it and was like, oh, I didn't realize Robert Kirkman was an artist and a colorist.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's no shade at Robert, right? Robert didn't say it. Robert's the first one in an interview to bring up his collaborators. However, to the world at large, he created The Walking Dead. He created Invincible, right? Nobody knows who fucking Ryan Otley is. Nobody knows who Charlie Adler is. Nobody knows those people. And that's bullshit. You know? Nobody knows Cory Walker, who's the co-creator of Invincible, designed all the characters, you know, the original characters. But that doesn't matter, I guess. So I get it.
I think that's a problem that probably can't go away. Artists obviously were the driving force behind comics in the 90s. And it's weird. It's wild how much that has changed. But the reality is that the reasons why people look to comics have changed over the last 30 years. I think that now people don't look to comics for the art in the same way that they did in the 90s. You especially when you're a kid, right? You buy a comic book, you don't even necessarily understand all of the words or know exactly what's going on. You might have picked up the book at your grocery store and you've never even seen a comic book before. But the cover's crazy and Jim Lee's the artist, so you're like, yep, this is cool, this is amazing. And that's how it was. And now I think, you know, a lot of people come for the writer. They come for the story. What's the story? As comic stories have been taken more seriously over the years, and there's been an emphasis on that, I think artists have unfortunately taken a back seat. Also, a lot of the job that an artist does is behind the scenes. Not all of their work is what you see, in the sense that a lot of times artists have great ideas that enhance the story. A lot of times writers don't even understand their story fully until they see it on the page, because the artist added this thing or that thing or spiced it up in this way that changed things. Those are things that are hard to give credit to an artist for, just because that's the behind the scenes creative process, you know, that not everyone's interested in. So I think it's tough to break that cycle that Pete laid out. But I do think that as fans, we can do a better job of being, and not even fans, like forget that, like people who talk about comics, whether you're a reviewer or, you know, whatever, if you're talking about a comic, you should know who the creative team is, the whole team.
Yeah. And I think that's something we've gotten better about over time, and like there's still a lot of room for improvement. And I know that we do it better than a lot of our peers. So, yeah, I think just give credit where credit's due.
Let's talk about Comic-Con. We're gonna talk about Comic-Con because ReedPop is getting into the subscription service business.
Sure. Who isn't?
Right. So let me ask you this. All right. Would you pay $65 a year?
Oh,
Oh, okay. All right. We'll move on. No.
Cool. So the Eisners, huh?
ReedPop's offering what they're calling metaverse memberships, which are going to offer the following at the $65 tier: access to live video and or audio streams of most panels for NYCC, C2E2, Emerald City Comic-Con, and MCM London, and VOD access for 30 days after the show, access to purchase convention-exclusive merchandise, access to unspecified digital celebrity and talent panels year-round with exclusive access to at least one every 3 months, and a limited edition enamel pin for the metaverse memberships. First of all, this is interesting in the sense that they're offering the ability for you to watch the convention from home. So we've talked about how conventions are going to change now that we are, now that they're returning in the COVID era and what that has to look like. Being able to watch conventions from home is pretty cool. It's not the same experience as going to it. It's probably not a better one, but you do get to watch it in your boxers or your underwear or whatever. So there is that. DC Fandom offered that same thing for free, but you can pay for it if you want to for New York Comic-Con. But that's the $65 tier. What if I told you there was a $99 tier? You could pay. Yeah, I believe it in your case. You could pay $100, and this is what you get access to that you don't in the $65 tier. Exclusive access to pre-sale events for tickets and badges to the aforementioned events, 2 per membership per event. First access to purchase photo ops and autographs 48 hours before they're available to the general public. First access to purchase con-exclusive merchandise. So essentially, if you spend $99 a month or a year, imagine $99 a month, $99 a year on this subscription, you get access to buy things early. You get access to spend money before other people can spend their money. That's it. Spend more money.
Sean, I'm all about scarcity, okay? If you can't have it, I want it, okay?
So, but before...
and that sums up Marco's position on NFTs.
I think the $99 price point, I agree with everything you're saying. Like, that's, whatever you're paying for to be a VIP so that you can buy stuff before other people. If that's the kind of collector you are, I guess that's what you want to do with your money. Fine, whatever. To talk about like the actual, thing of it, right? Like this as a service overall, I think this is actually a really good idea. I think we talked about this, when we discussed the return of New York Comic-Con earlier this year and everything. And even before that, San Diego. There are a lot of people who want to experience convention events or convention culture or whatever, that can't go to a convention, right? Whether that's because of like health restrictions or financial restrictions, right? Like maybe you can afford the ticket, but you can't afford to fly to New York and get a hotel and stay there for a week and all that shit, right?
Whatever it is.
This being an opportunity for you to experience the parts of a convention that are not physical, right? Like being able to get the exclusive swag, being able to go to the panels and all that stuff. Like that's a big reason that people go to conventions, So the idea that people who are either limited from their health or their financial situation or their location can still be a part of the event at whatever capacity they feel like they want to for that $65, that doesn't feel unreasonable. And I don't feel like it's an unreasonable amount of money. $65 a year to get access to four of the biggest conventions that happen annually. It's pretty good.
But the price of like a Saturday ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say the $99 one I think is unreasonable just because it doesn't offer you much more than what you could get on the 65. Like if you're already going to be paying $65 to not go to C2E2, Emerald City, New York City, whatever, then why bother getting the exclusive early access to get the ticket access? I feel like that's probably a little backwards on that part. And then if you're really into photo ops and autographs, cool. I mean, that's something that works for you. But if you're just there for what I feel like a lot of people go for, which is panels and just to be like amongst sort of the floor and what's going on, I think that the $65 for all four is pretty worth it, especially if you're only going to go to one of these. I'm presumably only going to go to New York City Comic Con, but I can't go to any of the other ones, or I probably won't. Then maybe I'll just take a peek if I have access to this, and see what's going on, see what the news is, kind of see it in real time, and be able to whatever limited capacity, be able to experience the same thing.
I really dislike this. I definitely see the point about people who can't physically attend, but I don't think that a subscription is the way to solve that. I mean, I think it's the way to solve their financial woes more than anything.
Yeah.
Because we have seen that you can do live video and audio from these, and it's been offered as free services. In fact, ReedPop themselves did that. They hosted Comic-Con online in 2020. San Diego had Comic-Con at home. DC Fandom had their thing. So, and all of those things were free access. So that's a little frustrating. I think that if it's a concern about people's ability to access the event, yeah, why not give them free video? I think, the premium price that you pay to go to Comic-Con is about the totality of Comic-Con. And then you could make the convention exclusive merchandise purchasable without a subscription. The digital celebrity and talent panels year round, that's a little murky. I don't know if that's a part of this that you get for free, or if it's something that you have to pay an additional price point for.
It sounds like it's included, but
yeah,
it sounds like it's included.
Yeah, and then the pin, okay, I guess. It just feels like you're like, what is it? It works out to like what, around $5 a month, somewhere in that realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.
I can't imagine having, the typical, I would say the average person probably has like 3 subscription services that they're, paying for annually. I can't imagine adding this to my stack. Granted, I don't need it.
And I think that's the thing. I don't think it's the thing the average person would do. I feel like this is definitely like a niche market that this caters to.
Which is why I think it would be better if it wasn't paywalled and they did this in a way that allowed everyone to have access to the streams, because then it might actually encourage people who don't go to Comic-Con for reasons that don't have anything to do with restrictions to go, because it's fun and it looks cool.
Yeah.
And there are all these things that can happen. And then selling the convention exclusive merchandise, like, why does it need to be exclusive? Like, when the convention happens, put that shit up online. When you go to WrestleMania, there's nothing there that you can't buy online on the online store that same weekend. They make as much money as they can. And I don't understand why, if you're trying to make money and you're ReedPop, you wouldn't make as much money as you can. Sell the merchandise to anybody that wants it.
They've experimented with that in the past. I remember the last, I want to say 2019 maybe, and they did it last year too, where they had like the New York Comic Con exclusive merch, and it was like at, you could buy it at Hot Topic like that month, and like shit like that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we might not see that happen. But to your
Well,
point,
they can't now.
with this, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
this does potentially change that up. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, to Marco was joking about it before, but I mean, it works, right? Scarcity drives demand, and people buy shit that they wouldn't buy if it wasn't limited.
I think like while I don't agree with the paywall piece, it makes sense on their end to recoup whatever loss they can't, because presumably you're still, and this is going to be depending on the state, depending on like how comfortable the venue is, how comfortable the people are, you're going to see a decrease in volume, and this is a potential to recoup on some of that lost volume. I don't know why they wouldn't do it per event. It feels like this is something like a pay-per-view fight kind of situation for boxing, where you would pay for some sort of access to see something, and I feel like that makes that kind of model exists, and it's somewhat being replicated here, obviously for a much more niche event than a sporting event. But the subscription service is interesting because we've talked about this in the past. You'll get it, maybe you'll forget about it, and maybe you won't access it, and that's consistent revenue. But I would think a fair price to pay per con to access like a stream and get all of these things would be like $45. I don't see a world where they wouldn't switch to a per event sort of situation. And maybe this is just because the subscription service model is popular right now that they haven't opted for that.
I mean, I think it's what you just said, though. I think it's that buying tickets for an event, that's an obligation, right? Like buying Comic-Con tickets is a pain in the ass every time you do it. And it's stressful every time you do it. Whereas if you're like, well, I go to Comic-Con every year for $60, which if you're in a certain financial bracket, right, which you can argue probably a lot of the people that go to Comic-Con regularly or like, I go to Comic-Con every year and spend way too much money on shit I don't need. It speaks to you having expendable income, right? So the idea that a regular Comic-Con goer, would spend this $60 that is probably a negligible amount of money, right? That's a video game, whatever. Okay, I spent it, it's spent. Now, I don't have to worry about getting my tickets next time because I get to buy them before general admission. If I actually...
Not for that price
No,
point,
for the 90.
Oh, that's the 91?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. I thought that was for both. Even so, though, right? Like, it eliminates that headache, and you have this idea of, like, this is just a reoccurring thing. I don't need to do it. I don't need to think about it. It just happens. And if $100 or $60 is a negligible amount of money to you, then that's, it's on, you set it and forget it. And then you get those benefits, whatever they may be throughout the year. And if you take them up on them, great. If you don't, you don't. It's money that you weren't thinking about anyway. And for ReedPop, it's all money right in their pocket, right? And if you got it and then forget to cancel your thing and it renews for the next year, they keep you on the hook.
It's a lame business tactic.
Yeah,
and
for
I
sure.
think that
Works.
it
works though. Yeah,
I think it might work, but I don't think that that's a good way to generate goodwill with people.
For sure.
I think that offering a service that's worthwhile would be the way to go. Some kind of discount at concessions would be cool. That might be tough for them to do, but that would be great. I think offering people the ability to save money is always positive.
Or like discounts on the gear, the exclusive stuff would be cool.
Discounts on the swag. AMC Stubs is a great example. $20 a year, I think. And every time you make a purchase, you get banked,
Stubs points
that you can
right?
use. Yeah, exactly. And you don't pay for the fees. They waive the fees. Like there's so many things about it that are like, this is worth me having, and these kinds of memberships that don't give you access, that aren't content based primarily. Like the difference between this and Netflix, right? Need to have incentive and ways for you to make it valuable for you over time, the usage over time. Like I should keep this and not cancel it after NYCC because it also gives me this. And there's nothing like that.
The fact that they're not like archiving the footage doesn't help. Like if it was like you get access to the library and it was every year's Comic-Con events, you know, and you could go
That'd be
back.
cool.
That would be useful for journalists. That would be useful for, you know, your CBRs and whatever, right? They would have a subscription to this then, you know, because it would be, oh, cool, we have all that footage handy. Great.
Yeah.
But it's not that.
Unfortunately not, but we'll see. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this will not exist anymore 5 years from now.
Interesting. I don't know that I agree. I think that there's a potential that that you're correct there. I could see it evolve and change because
Yes.
I think that I really do think that with maybe better incentives or a better price point that I could see this being something that people would flock to, but remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot that could be fixed here and expanded upon, and if this is the first iteration of that, I just see like opportunity to add to it to make it more worthwhile.
All right. Well, we're gonna close out today with the Eisner Award nominations. Those have been revealed this week. And there was, again, lots of anger and frustration on comics Twitter about some of the nominated folks and who weren't nominated. We're not going to go over the entire list, of course. That would just be nuts. But there are so many categories and so many creators that are nominated, and it's awesome to see all these different names getting recognized for their work. So for best continuing series, Bitterroot is nominated, Daredevil's nominated, Department of Truth is nominated, Gideon Falls, Stillwater, and Usagi Yojimbo. That's a tough category.
Shout out to Chip Zdarsky for having 2 books in it, no less.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's legit as fuck.
As a writer,
Yes.
outrageous. You know, this dude completely shifted gears.
Yeah, he went from being one of the hottest up and coming artists to one of the hottest writers.
Yeah, unreal. I would go with Daredevil.
I'd go with Usagi, but that's bias. I haven't even touched the new stuff yet.
Well, I haven't touched Usagi, so
Cool to see it on the list, though.
yeah.
For sure.
I love to see so many Image books.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just that's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
I always feel like these lists are a little bit hoity.
Like indie dominated because it's very like, yeah. I get you.
Patchy.
This year, I didn't feel as much. This year, I thought that they definitely were more open to hosting Marvel and DC titles. In the best limited series category, Far Sector was nominated, which that book is phenomenal. And
Strange
I would love to
Adventures
see
as well.
it win.
Yeah,
Great-
Three DC books.
Yeah, I was gonna say almost every book in that category is DC. Yeah, it's also Strange Adventures and Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen.
Yep. Black Widow got the nod for best new series. So did Crossover.
Yeah, crossover.
We Only Find Them When They're Dead is up there. Philadelphia and Department of Truth. We Only Find Them When They're Dead is tremendous. And,
Is it?
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
Oh man, I fell off it. Something about the art. I don't know. I couldn't keep up with it.
Interesting.
Has anyone reading Philadelphia?
No.
No.
I've been hearing really good things about it.
Yeah. Makes me want to check it out.
Yeah.
Well, you're living in Philadelphia now, so
I know.
you might as well get familiar with what your neighborhood's like.
I gotta get in on this.
Yeah, maybe participate. So this is where things started to get dicey for people. The best writer category does not feature a woman or well, it does feature James Tinian, who is a gay man. But other than that, everybody here is a white guy. So Ed Brubaker was nominated. Matt Fraction was nominated. Jonathan Hickman was nominated. Jeff Lemire was nominated. James Tinian, as I said, and Chip Zdarsky those were the nominees for Best Writer. And I have something to say about this. I think, first of all, that it's pretty whack to see your peers nominated and your thought is, oh, these guys aren't the ones who are deserving of this. These X people are more deserving. I think that it's crazy to look at that list and not think or to think that anyone that's there doesn't deserve to be there. Those are some of the, I mean, that is an amazing list. Like, I'm sure that each one of us could think of like one or two people that we would add, but who would you take off?
I think that's the bigger thing. Yeah, is that like I don't feel like any of these people don't deserve to be on the list. Right? Yeah. Obviously, there's dozens of other people who are doing great work that deserve to be acknowledged as well. But I don't think that the answer to that is to say that, like these folks don't deserve to be on the list.
And we just did the interview with Jeremy Holt. I stand by every single thing I said and always say on this podcast about diversity and how important it is. But I don't think that just adding a woman or a minority or a non-binary or anything like that for the sake of representation does a service to representation when it's not earned. And I guess, like, I'm not saying that there are no women or any other sort of person who deserves the nod, but I'll be honest with you, I can't think of a person of that type right now that I think is putting out work that stands alongside, shoulder to shoulder, these creators. I just can't. You know, like, I've loved Far Sector. N.K. Jemisin is doing a great job. That's their only book. And again, while I've loved it, I don't know that I think I don't know that from a volume perspective you can put that person up against what James Tinian has done this year.
I think the volume perspective is probably a good thing to consider in this conversation too, because I think when you look at this list of creators, like, all of them are all people that I think, you know, you can't make an argument aren't at the top of the field right now. But also are all people who are putting out a lot of work that's
all good.
That is all at least above average to great. Which is, you know, I think that's part of this conversation as well, right? And that's why you have, like, multiple different kinds of categories, you know? Because, like, I think that there is an argument to be made for that, where it's like you want to look at the people who are doing the best work, and when you have, like, a short list of people who are putting out, like, a ton of high quality work, you know, yeah, I mean, it's a competitive field right now, you know, like, I made the point earlier this year that I actually think that this is one of the this is talking about last year's stuff, but I think we're, like, in a really strong period right now where, like, there are a lot of young, talented artists that are on the come up that might be on this list next year or 2 years from now, you know? But some of these other people that are, you know, more established and are not quite the old guard, but are definitely no longer the new guard, they're kind of in that period right now, you know?
Right. Is there anyone, like Marco, Kale, do you guys disagree with what I put down? Or
I don't think so. I mean, if it comes down to quality, I feel like I'm probably not picking up any of the books that are being led by some female creator. So I can't speak to the quality there, but I think it's a good list. I mean, shit, they're talented. Like, I can't knock them for that.
That's the big thing for me. It's like, it's not a matter of saying that there aren't other creators that should be on this list. I'm more disagreeing with the sentiment of, I don't think that acknowledgement of, hey, why is everyone on this list a white man, has to be at the expense of these creators' talent, because they are good and they deserve the recognition. I think you can have both of those conversations.
I think too, it's similar to the film awards, the what do you call them, the Emmys?
The Oscars.
It's okay. It's who is picking this list, right? Like, if it's a group of, I mean, for the sake of the argument, if it's a group of white people, I mean, maybe that's where they lean. I don't know. Like, but it's a group of people who read a ton of things every year. And this is the stuff that stood out to them. Right? So, I mean, it's not an exhaustive list. Like, it's an exhaustive list of every good thing that came out.
Right.
Yeah, you're highlighting some of the strongest work of the year. And at the end of the day, there can only be so many people on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you add one space, what does that do to the list, right? Like, who can say?
Yeah, like if I had one space, if I could simply add one person to this list, would that person automatically be a person of color? No. It wouldn't automatically be anything other than the first creator I think of who's been killing it this year, who's not already here.
And that said, like, the writer artist category is chock full of, people of color and also all sorts of varying people. And you can even see that by their name, like, Jean Luen Yang, like, I mean, that's right there,
And there's like an argument to be made that, like, is Jean Luen Yang not in the best writer category because they're in this category, right? Like, well, they're a multi threat, so you wouldn't put that, or like Junji Ito, right? Yeah. Like, if Junji Ito wasn't an artist, would they be in best writer? Maybe,
Yeah, and we can have a conversation about maybe there needs to be a look at who the judges are, or whatever the case may be. Honestly, I contend that things like this are dumb. Outside of the ability to recognize the creators in a formal sense for their work, I think that this is ridiculous. I think it's weird to get up in arms about it in general. And it's not just the Eisners, it's all award ceremonies. I think they're odd. It's odd that people get invested. But I can't understand how, if you're a creator, you sit there and you decry the work of your peers for a list that they didn't put together. It has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I think it's the same as what we were saying earlier, but we were directing it at fans. Where I just don't think that's productive. I think if you want to criticize somebody, criticize the voting board, right? Don't criticize the creators who are being acknowledged, because, I think I generally agree with you, Sean, and when it where award shows are concerned, that, like, I just don't think they matter in the grand scheme of things. But I also think that they are nice. Like, it's nice to have a formal place where we can get together and celebrate, the achievements of the industry, of the medium for the year. And I do think that, to your point, right, that, like, there's nothing wrong with having misgivings about the list, or your own critiques of it, or feeling like there should be a conversation about who gets to make those decisions. Yeah, I'm here for any of those conversations, but I don't think you have to have that conversation at the expense of those who have been chosen by the current voting board and who are having their work acknowledged. Because, for some of them, I'm sure that is like an achievement that they're proud of or something like that. And I don't think you need to tear down other people's work to champion the people who you feel like are not getting recognition, but deserve it.
And even still, like, things like this, like the Eisners, the Emmys, the Oscars, whatever, like, at their most cynical, they're to sell more things. They're to highlight things so more people will buy them. So a rising tide brings more ships, or whatever that saying is. Like, it's good.
Yeah, I just feel like, it causes so much strife. Like, people are always so angry about these things. When the Emmys are on, man, I hate Twitter.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh
man.
My God.
You gotta get off Twitter.
I think it very much comes back to this is like a conversation we had like 2 weeks ago or whatever. It was whenever I was on the show last. People will take anything as an opportunity to create controversy or to vent negativity. And I think for me, what I would rather focus on in terms of this event and this announcement and everything is just that, like, hey, like, what a great year we had for comics, right? Like, let's pat these creators on the back, and to everybody who did great work that isn't on this list, like, shout out to you too. You did great work too.
Or like have a thread where it's like, hey, like, yes, these guys are deserving, but people that I feel that are right up there. Here's my list of people that I think could deserve, and you guys should check these people out. Like, put it in a positive way where you can spin it so that way people read more comics, regardless of what it is.
How are you gonna get internet clout if you're not mad?
You know what, Kale?
That's the other way to get clout, is to be extremely positive. Okay,
I'm here trying to be wholesome and shit, and Kale, you just gotta take a big old poop.
That was my thing, Marco, was, I didn't see, and I'm sure someone did that, right? But I didn't see that. All I saw was anger, and it could have been an opportunity. Like, maybe I am ignorant, right? Maybe I don't know about a creator who's doing something genius and brilliant, who's just not on my radar for whatever reason. And if you know about them, this is the perfect opportunity to shout that person out. Like, hey, this person should be on your radar. This person did great work. This, and that. That's the Eisner list right here. There are books on this list, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know Andy Diggle was doing a book. I haven't heard their name in a while. Shoot, I might have to buy that. That's what this list is. Make your own list. Don't worry about this list. Make your own list. If you feel like this list is shit, make your list. Who cares? This is fake. It's all bullshit, right? Like, it doesn't actually matter. So make your own list. We're trying to sell comics. Let's sell some comics. Well, your anger is not helpful, but your positivity, your support of the creators is helpful.
But I want that plaque, man.
Hey, great. There's like over a dozen categories.
I think that's a big problem too. And this is kind of my last note on this, is that I think that there are a lot of people who think of like, well, I'm nobody and I have no clout. Nobody follows me. So what I say doesn't matter. But they'll use that voice to say negative shit and to try to tear down the shit that's frustrating them, rather than like using, like, we all have a platform, right? Like, and everybody's is a different size, but there you have your circle, right? If there's some comic, some creator that you really love that you feel like is getting snubbed, like, and you're listening to this show right now, come tweet at us about it. Come tell us, right? Like, that's what I want to hear. Like, let me know what I should be checking out. Let me know what I'm missing. Because yeah, like, I'm totally here for the conversation that, like, there are other creators that are like just getting passed by, you know? We were talking earlier this episode about how some of the best books we've been reading lately have been coming from, you know, different kinds of authors that are not white straight men. I certainly have read enough stories by white straight men in my day, and I'm sure I'll read a lot more. So yeah, give me more. Tell me more. Tell me who to check out.
Yeah, and I think we'll leave it there. please do write in with your thoughts about that. If there are creators' books that we haven't checked out yet that you think are worth our time, let us know. And if you think we're totally wrong and off base on the issue, let us know. Definitely go check out Made in Korea #1 by Jeremy Holt. They put a lot of work into the book, as you heard in our interview, and it's worth your time. The second issue and the reprint will be out on the 30th, so give that a look. And make sure that you guys are leaving us a follow, a review, and a rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. If that happens to be YouTube, hit the subscribe button for free. Share the video with your friends. Like the video. All those things are free to do, and they help us out a lot more than they cost you. You can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. If you want to hang out with us, you can do so by joining our Discord server, where we're always having fun, interactive, and engaging conversations with you guys. Make sure that you are checking out our review shows. If you are a regular listener of the Comics Pals and you remember the good old days when you could listen to our reviews right here, they still exist. They're just not in the main show. So every week we put out reviews for the Marvel, DC, Boom, etc. books, and we also do Image reviews every single Wednesday, day and date. So if you are interested in those things, definitely check us out on those reviews. If you're a follower of X-Men, you got to do it, because that's the only place you're going to hear our spoiler-filled thoughts about those books. We're not going to come on here and spoil stuff for those books if it's not in the news. So make sure you're doing that. And then last but not least, I want to plug the book club, but I don't know what book club is next. Marco?
Multiversity is coming out.
There you go. End of the month. Last Tuesday of the month. Multiversity, Grant Morrison, lots of different artists. Great book. Check it out. Plugs, Pete.
Thank you guys for joining us here in another episode of the Comics Pals. If you want to connect with me, I'm @loud_Pete on Twitter and Instagram. Come chat with me about the creators that you feel like you wanted to see on this list, because I'd love to check out their work. If you want to get some more stuff from me, you can go check out the video game podcast. I host the podcast every Monday, lootpots.com, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to go check out some of my music, you can go follow my band at LFTF the band on Twitter, Longfriend, Time Friend. We just shared a live set that we did up in Vermont a couple of weeks ago. It's like 20 some odd minutes, like 8 songs. So if you want to get a taste for what it would be like to see us live, now that that's a thing again, you can do that.
Did you do the 76ers song?
We did not play it there, but I have some news on that. Might be coming to Spotify sooner than later. So.
Oh,
shit.
Cool. All right. Nice.
Awesome. Marco. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's too late. Marco, go ahead.
You can find
The
me at
disrespect.
Mr. Marco Enomoto on Instagram and Twitter. Come talk to me about the Harvey Awards, because the Eisner Awards are cool, but so are the Harvey Awards, and they have like some different variations of like even further D&Q shit, Fantagraphics, whatever. And somebody who deserves to be on any list, Stephanie Phillips. She's great.
Kale.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TotoInto. That's TOTOINTOW. You can find Phil at Cyborg Bebop. That's CYBORGBEBOP.
Plug your work.
Do I have some?
That's the reason why you have the second slot, you shit.
Listen, I didn't make the show.
Yeah, I did. And if
Well?
that's the reason why you have the second slot.
Listen, you're
Being very generous to you.
What?
Anyways, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram only at Sean Soapbox. Hit me up to talk about the comics that you're into right now. I am in love with this industry, and this has been one of my favorite years in comics. I feel like every week I read something that just knocks my socks off. And a lot of that is due to us doing so many reviews for so many different books, some of which I might never have read if it weren't for this podcast, like Made in Korea. So loving comics, loving this podcast. Thank you guys for listening. With that, we're the Comics Pals signing off. Take care, guys.
See you next week.